Yeah, wait, he's alive. He's alive. Yeah, wait, look.
The king.
Draw nigh to God, he will draw nigh unto you. Draw nigh to God, he will draw nigh unto you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, purify your hearts, ye double-minded. Draw nigh to God, he will draw nigh unto you. Draw nigh to God, he will draw nigh unto you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. Yeah, wait.
All right, shalom. It has been 7 months, something like that, more than half a year since I have done a Draw Nigh to God, Draw Nigh to the Creator show here at Take on the World TV. I've missed you guys. There's a lot's been going on. Maybe I'll sum it up in a couple minutes here in a second. But tonight, joining me to discuss, to recoat Joseph, is the one and only Jeff Brannon.
Hey, shalom, everybody. Ian, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Like I said, I still got a little bit of that. Every time I do a show, I get a little anxious. And I was telling Jeff right beforehand, I said, man, I forgot how I get anxious, no matter how well studied up I am or not.
Yeah.
And no matter how many shows I've been doing, I get a little anxious right beforehand. I start to get a little nervous, you know. But no, I'm doing good, man. A lot has changed for me since the last time I've done a show. The last time I did a show, I think, was with Vicky Joy.
Yeah,
and David and Goliath, and it was a cool video because I got to bring out stuff that I've been waiting to bring out for years, including all the ballistics. I don't know if I talked to you about that or not, but the ballistics of the stone. Oh, nice. Dude, we got stone density, we got the speed of this stone, we got the distance fact. Oh, dude, it's ridiculous. If I were to put all the information from that video in a succinct manner, because we did 5 hours, Jeff, you and I talk.
Yeah,
and Vicky and I, man, I let it go too much, man. That should have been a 3-hour video, not a 5-hour video. So I feel really bad for the listeners. But I think that's the last time.
So you did a 5-hour video, and you're like, I'm done.
No, man, no.
We're doing 30 minutes tonight, guys. Hallelujah. We want Ian back.
Yeah, don't be telling them that. Don't be telling them that. No, it was one of those things, and I've told the listeners before. This show, unlike the videos I did on Facebook and stuff like that before Take on the World, allows me to be a little bit more vulnerable and a little bit more transparent and stuff. So some of the listeners that have kept up with multiple videos that we've done here at Draw Nigh to the Creator show, it's not foreign for them to hear me say that, when I'm regimented doing show after show each week, or like you and I did the Exodus and Jonah and Esther, sometimes it was 2 videos a week. You're in it. But as soon as I have an excuse for a week off, it's easier to take a second week. And then after the second week, it's even easier for the third. And then after the third, the conviction starts to lessen, and man, 6-7 months got away from me. I think there was some good in it. I think some of it was needed. I think some of it was downright. I let the flesh say, well, forget it. I had moments, man, where like I wanted to do a show and I'd have a sermon and everything like that. And then you get those, I don't know about you, man, but I get those thoughts and that little voice in your ear that says, somebody else is doing it better anyway, so what's the matter? You know what I mean? There's other members of the body more talented and this, that, and the other, and they go into more depth, and and so it was easy, and 6-7 months got away from me.
I had a similar thing happen just a couple months back, and I remember calling Miranda, and I'm just like, I don't even know if anybody's if this stuff is doing any good. I don't want to be wasting my time or God's time, maybe somebody else. And in that same week, Ian, I think we had 4 or 5 people contact us. And we didn't say this online. We didn't say it anywhere or anything like that. We had 4 or 5 people contact us with some pastoral things, talking about how they just happened upon our videos and how much it blessed them, and how, God will give you those little words of encouragement, and listen, the things that we're doing right now, we don't know the effect that they'll have, even way past today. And so that's definitely something that just.
There's 2 things that usually the Father hits me with. And he gave me some of those confirmations like you're talking about. I had some people reach out and say, hey, really missed your show. I even had one lady listener that said, I've got all these other people I listen to, but your show, I seem to learn from the best, whatever reason it is. And when you see that, it's like, it makes your heart go, oh, but then it was kind of also like, and I haven't been doing anything. You know what I mean? But like
Yeah.
there was like two things, man. The father tends to get me with these in these seasons where I pull away, and he's like, well, number one, it's not about you. So it's not about you. It's not about if you think you're effective or not, if you can see it or not. And I'm not even talking numbers. I'm just talking about straight up quality.
Just quality.
That's usually what gets me. It's not the numbers and things. It's the quality of like, well, there's somebody else out doing it better. So what am I doing? Adding to the mix. I'm watering it down. Let them do it. Maybe I'm not. And then I start thinking things like maybe I should just be focused on family and stuff like that. And there's seasons for that.
There are. Yeah.
But then he hits me with the number 2 and he says, well, each member of the body has gifts and talents. Are you going to bury yours? And that's the one that usually like sticks the knife in the heart a little bit where you're like, man. And that makes me want to come back. But no, I had confirmations and stuff, and then things came up. You know what I mean? Like every once in a while I had, you know.
Hey, tell them the confirmation about tonight's show. I thought that was fun.
Oh, well, you know, that was about having you join. I was going to do the show. I was actually going to do the show last weekend. And I'm kind of glad. Yeah. Brandon. Hey, we might be having those out here soon. I'm not, mum's the word. I'm not supposed to advertise certain products until they're out yet, but we are looking to have some of those and with some really cool things to it too.
Nice.
Yeah, no, I was going to do this show last weekend. And then for some reason, I just wasn't feeling up to it or I didn't feel led or whatever. And then I had time this weekend. I actually got some extra days off this week, Jeff. It was kind of a neat situation that God allowed me to have a few days off this week. So I was able to read and study and spend some more time with family and things. So, you know, Thursday, Friday, I wasn't working. So that was really cool. And, you know, I was like, I really want somebody to bounce off with. I like doing combos. I like discussions. And I was like, you know, I kept thinking, I want to do the show with Jeff. You know, Jeff and I can go back and forth and we'll talk some things. But I wasn't hearing a clear yes or no or anything like that. And then so I asked for a confirmation that you would hit me up on Facebook yesterday, asking about whether or not I was going to do it, whether or not you were going to join in and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I stayed till about 9 o'clock checking the Facebook. And then I was like, all right, whatever. I guess I'm supposed to do it on my own. And it kind of bummed me out because I was like, man, I don't want to be all by myself where people have to listen just me. And it's first coming back, you know, it's going to be boring. And then I checked today and I saw that you messaged after I got off. So I thought that was kind of cool because I was like, it was yesterday, like I asked. You know?
Yeah.
So
nice. Well, praise y'all, man. I'm excited about tonight. We're going to get into Joseph.
Yeah, man.
Recoating Joseph.
Recoating Joseph. And
love it.
Oh, bro. You know me and the wordplay. You know, because I was going to call it recapping. And then because of the way I am with wordplay, I'm like, well, man, a different hats means different offices, and we could go off of that. And I was like, but really, it was a change of garment, and I wanted to talk about that today a little bit if we get the chance, willing, about the change of the colorful coat into the kingly gear, the fine linen that is given to him by Pharaoh. Yeah, it's a change of robe, and you've got the physical and the spiritual and all the things in between. But recoating came up and I was like, oh man, that's applicable for not just one or two, but I would argue at least three different layers as to why that is. Yeah. So I was really happy with that title. Speaking of Joseph and coats and stuff, see if you can see this. You see that?
Yeah.
My wife and the kids today made Hanukkah cookies. We were at the grocery store the other day and we didn't do Hanukkah or anything like that, but they had one on clearance sale and it was Hanukkah cookies. And my wife's, in 2014, my wife and I were like, okay, we need to stay away from pork and shellfish. But by 2018, you're looking at gelatin and stuff like that. And then, a couple of years later, you start realizing things about like certain doughs that like Domino's or Jimmy John's uses for the bread has pork in it. And it's just they use pork hooves. What L-cysteine, right? And so you start looking into and you're not like controlling it to where like, you're expecting God's going to burn you or put his thumb down on you or whatever, but you become more aware. And because you've already got the pork chops away and you get the shellfish away, it's not like all at once. It's not this huge burden thing. Every once in a while I'll tell people about things because they'll ask, well, why can't you have these? Well, it has gelatin. And well, what's that have to do with anything? Like, well, unless this is beef or fish, it's a pork gelatin. So I'm not going to. And they're like, oh, I'm sorry your religion bears down on you like that. And I'm like, that's not it at all. I'm not sitting here feeling like God's going to condemn me or be angry at me or I'm going to get in trouble. It's one of those, he's telling me what's good for my body and what's not. And I I mean, I'm eating cookies here, Jeff, so obviously I don't have this perfected, but
Right.
you try to control certain things that you're aware of. The more you have knowledge on things, the more you're going to be responsible for those things. And so she's looking at the Hanukkah cookies, and she sees that there's nothing in the ingredients that's on our radar at the moment. So she's like, hey, let's do it. So today, the wife and the kids. So yeah, my wife made this one. She was like, you know, how do you think? And I was like, it looks really cool because she took a toothpick, made it look all fancy. It actually looks woven. If you're able to see it, it looks woven.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Up in person, and it says Joseph on it because she was like, oh, it's little coats. And I said, oh, I'm doing Joseph tonight. She's like, oh. So we got menorahs and we got coats with menorahs. All right, man. So you ready for this?
Hey, our chat is going nuts. We have a ton of people in the chat room. It's good to see everybody out, man. This is nice. This is nice. It's good to see you, man.
It's been a minute. Hey,
I'm gonna get mushy.
I actually got real emotional doing the study. And like you get emotional moments where you're doing a study, whether it's for show or for your own self or both or whatever. And you hit those moments where you're like, man, God's amazing, or man, I really don't own up like I should, or I need to work on this or whatever. But this week doing the Joseph study, the past 2 days, I've been shedding tears, and that's not real common for me. It was to the point where I was like, man, this stuff is hitting harder than Joseph has ever hit me before.
Wow.
And in the 9 years I've been born again, the past couple of days, and of course I wanted to do, I told you like a week and a half ago, I was like, I want to do a Joseph or a David.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it's lining up with the Torah portions. Karen probably remembers this. How many times does my video line up with the Torah portion? And I have no idea that it does.
Right.
But so of course I go to check to see who else is doing Joseph. Everybody's doing Joseph right now. And I was just like, oh geez, of course they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
it's the same spirit speaking out the same message. And that's just showing you that you're hearing from Yah. And guys, listen, you're listening, you're tuning in tonight. There's a reason that you're tuning in tonight. Don't take this by mistake. It's not just because you missed Ian as much as I have. It's because the Holy Spirit wants you to be here. There's a word for you tonight. There is something here tonight for you to help you with your walk. And so don't think about your neighbor's walk. Don't think about Ian's walk. Don't think about Jeff's walk. Take what's coming out tonight by the Spirit and see how you can apply that to your life. That's the main reason that we're all here tonight. Amen.
Yeah. Hey, I've got all kinds of notes tonight. Yeah, willing depends on how much we get through tonight about how we can apply Joseph's life story to us from every faceted of every role.
Yeah.
So, people read scripture stories, and whether they're really into it or not, you tend to try to relate to the hero of the story, right? So you're sitting there going like, oh, I'm like Joseph like this, I'm like that. But I mean, we've got Reuben we can compare ourselves to. We got Levi, we got Simeon, we got Judah. We've got Jacob, we've got Pharaoh.
Yeah.
And if we're going to be honest with ourselves, we should be able to see ourselves in all these roles and in positive ways and negative. And I've got some ones, Jeff, I even have one if we get to tonight where we can see ourselves as Pharaoh in a positive way. Which is not something that I thought would leave my lips, but there's some fun things tonight. So we'll see what we can get through. Okay, so for those of you who are familiar, I have done 2 Joseph videos here, Draw Nigh to the Creative Series, like a year ago. And I know it was like kind of like the Daniel one, and then the first Samuel study. All of a sudden, I just dropped off. Like I felt like doing Joseph, and then I felt like doing Joseph, and then it was like, nope, I feel like doing something else next. And I had people messaging me being like, are we going to finish the Joseph story? You got up to his brothers getting to Egypt. You rushed to that point at the end because you just seemed over it. And then what happens? You didn't even get to the end of Genesis. And I was like, I felt like I was supposed to do something else the next week.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, thanks. My wife's bringing me tea here. Hey, while you're here real quick, you want to take this back? There you go. All right, thank you. My amazing wife bringing me tea.
Nice. Nice.
So anyways, there's going to be some things that we're going to probably say that I already said in those 2 videos, but there's some details. If watching this video, you feel like maybe we didn't get into some of the details on certain things, the age differences between Joseph and Benjamin, what are the theories and things like that. If we don't get into those type of things tonight, go check out the other 2, but I got a feeling that tonight's going to be a lot more interesting than those other 2. So hence the recoding as well. My idea, which it doesn't always go by my idea, but my visual for tonight is that we're going to try to hit all of Joseph's life in one video. Can we do it? I don't know. We'll see. But we might end up breezing through and simply hitting emphatic points. So I just wanted to put that out there, and we'll see where the Spirit leads, man. I don't know.
Yeah,
there is room on the thumbnail pic to have part 2 on there. I wasn't aiming for that, but it is what it is.
yeah.
Okay, so I was thinking we would start, Jeff, with Genesis 37 here, with Joseph's dreams, right? It does help, especially if you're not familiar with the life story of Joseph, if you're not familiar with the last half of the book of Genesis. It does help to go back and look at Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, or at the very least Jacob, before you get to Joseph. There's some things that I'm going to be bringing up tonight that it helps having that prior knowledge of the history there. Okay, so Genesis 37. I didn't want to do a verse line by line. You can have it up there, Jeff, and scroll through and stuff like that. I just wanted to bring up some things and then stop me, Jeff, if there's something that you want to emphasize or discuss. Okay.
Yeah, I'm good, man. I thought it'd be nice to have it up.
Okay, so long story short, Joseph has these dreams, right? Now, in verse 2 there, you'll see it says that Joseph is 17 years old. He's feeding the flock with his brethren, right? And Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. Okay, so right away from the beginning of this chapter, we're seeing a couple things here. Joseph is 17. We're getting a timing clue of his age here, which we see a couple times throughout, and it helps to understand certain factors. And then number 2, you see that some pastors make it out to be like he's the tattletale. That's not the vibe I get. It is what it is. But I think he was having a role of, Jeff, I don't know. You weren't with me with the other Joseph videos, right?
No.
Okay. Well, in the other Joseph videos, I talked about why I thought, in my personal opinion, that some of the favoritism, not all of the favoritism, but some of the favoritism towards Joseph was justified, and that Joseph hadn't lived long enough to even make the wicked decisions that we see, especially with like Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. And then depending on what extra biblical text you look at, you might consider some of the other brothers as well, but especially those 4. I'm going to be bringing up those names tonight a lot, and I got some questions for you, Jeff, on your views of some of those 4 in certain particular situations here. But we see that they did some pretty wicked, evil things, right? Before this chapter, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah have all done some not so wise, not so righteous decisions. So when it says that he brought back their evil report, I'm not getting the feeling of he's tattletaling on spilt milk. I'm getting the feeling that, they're being lazy, they're lying, they're stealing, they're cheating, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. There is an actual evil report to be had, and Joseph is trying to be a steward in his position of what he is called to do, and report that to his father, because they are all looking over the possessions, the land, the property, the cattle, what have you, of Jacob's, which is entirety of the entire families, but it's a family business. Yeah. Okay, so that's something I wanted to emphasize and highlight. Okay, and we're going to see that brought up a few times. Joseph, talking about the evil report about his brothers and the disconnect of the relationship there of this messed up family. And I say messed up for many reasons, and I talked about this in the other 2 Joseph videos. But you've got one man with 4 consecutive. Continual wives. These aren't, a first wife and then a second wife after a divorce or a death or something like that. This is 4 at one time. Not that he married all 4 at once, but he had all 4 wives at once, and you've got 12 children by these 4 women. I mean, obviously there's going to be some dysfunction. There's going to be some issues, and we really try to hit on those in those last 2 videos. But these are things we need to keep in mind. Okay, so now Israel, which is Jacob, right? For anybody who's not aware, you have the name change after the hip displacement, right? Which is something I might bring up later on tonight. And it says that he loved Joseph more than all his children. So we can see right away the favoritism is not perceived by the brethren. It is, in fact. This is one of those cool things about scripture, kind of like a narration of a fantasy book. You can have the narrator tell you the thoughts and the heart conditions of the fake characters. But when we look at historical documents and stuff, you don't get to see that, because you're just giving the perception from an outside view. But having been that the scripture is written by the divine inspiration through the perception of the Father's eyes, and hence why Israel as a nation is so, willing to come forward and say, we messed up on this and this and this, on things that you don't want to admit to even your best of friends. And there it is in the scriptures for everybody to read, because it's divinely inspired. So we see that this is not a perception of just the brethren, but it is indeed the fact. Jacob, Yaakov, Israel, Yisrael, however you want to pronounce his name, the patriarch of these 12 here, he truly did love Joseph more than all of his children. He was the son of his old age, which makes me also wonder about Benjamin in the situation at this time, right? Okay, so it says he made him a coat of many colors. We talked about in the last 2 videos. Maybe he physically made it. Maybe he had it made. Either way. Now, last time I did the videos, I had done some studies and just verified the claims out there that, the colorful dyes probably wouldn't have been very common. And thus it shows the significance, importance, and a lot of payment would have been put into this and a lot of work to get those dyes and things like that. It wouldn't have been common. They would have been wearing, browns and oranges, greens, basic subdued colors, natural colors, your tan linen, not your dyed to have these rainbow-esque colors to it, right? So you have your favoritism there. But what was new to me this time around, and maybe for some of the listeners, I don't know, but there's a lot of scholars that believe, based on the etymology here for the word tunic and things of that nature, when you're looking at his coat, that it's indicating long sleeves. Are you familiar with this, Jeff?
Yep.
Okay, so you know where I'm going at with this?
I thought, I've got another point, but go when you get done with the coat. I've got another point about Jacob, about Israel.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the long sleeves, from what I'm understanding, this past couple weeks looking into it, it seems like there's a great possibility that the indication there, long sleeves, is like wearing a white collar at a work. You are not the blue collar worker. You're not getting your hands dirty. You're literally not dressed for the job. So you have the 10 older brothers doing the physical labor, actually, going out there taking care of the flocks and things like that. And then you have Joseph, who's kind of like that assistant manager who comes out of the office. He's got the clipboard. He's got the mug of coffee, and he sips it, and he goes, I think we're going to need you to come in on Sunday, right? Yeah. And he's got his little clipboard, and he's telling on you for things. They didn't sign in for this. They clocked in late again. And that's the view that we see of the brethren having for Joseph here. So the long sleeves, Joseph, why don't you get your hands dirty? I'm not even dressed for the job. Yeah. Right. So that took on a whole new meaning of that value of that coat, and how it blatantly, it not just shows the favoritism, but the situation of, no, his hands don't get dirty. He will not have calluses on his hands. This is my son, my one and only son. Yeah. Right. Because that's kind of the perception of Jacob that we get on this, is that he views Joseph as his first son, because it's his first son from his the first wife, the only wife he truly intended to have. Right. And then things changed. Yeah. So I just want to get in there with the long sleeves. What you got about Israel?
So a couple things on that. The coat of many colors, the statue that we see in Patterns of Exodus, that documentary there, just hats off to that one. The statue that we see in Egypt has long sleeves as well. I just throw that up there. So so that's kind of another witness to that.
I'm glad you brought that up, the Patterns of Evidence. That's good.
Yeah, so there's that. I wanted to talk just real quick in verse 3 about Israel, about Jacob, about Yaakov. It says because he was the son of his old age. Right. I can testify to this. When I had Jessica, she was, I think I was in my early 30s. I just turned 50 this year, and I can tell you there's definitely a maturing that goes on. We see it in our culture today more with a child versus a grandchild. But if you have to think about how far space in between these children were, and how much maturing Jacob or Israel has done. And the parenting styles change. The first kid, oh my gosh, you're treating them like kid gloves. You don't want them to step on the eggshell. You don't want them to do any kind of little thing. The second child, you're like, let them go. We're fine, that type of thing. But imagine all of these kids growing up a little bit different, and all the time the father is perfecting Jacob as a father, and he's moving him into a more loving area, because you learn to appreciate your children more the older that you get, and that's one reason we see typically grandparents spoiling, or, kind of not necessarily all the way spoiling, but being a little bit more generous with the grandkids. And that's one of the things is that we see a maturing on some of those areas. So think about the mistakes that maybe Jacob had made raising up Simeon and raising up Reuben and raising up the different ones. And then we get close to the end, and we have Joseph being born, and we, spoiler alert, Benjamin means ravenous wolf, never being satisfied. I think even went too far and got to a place where Benjamin was even more spoiled in that sense, and he grew up not satisfied with what was being given to him. So I think we'll get more into that a little bit later on when we get
okay.
down.
Yeah, I had some thoughts on the silver cup, but I could see you adding to that then.
Yeah.
That's interesting, because I wanted to talk about the silver cup if we can get to it tonight.
Yeah. I'm going to try really hard not to.
I know,
derail us, brother.
Hey, Jeff, you and I both, you have things that you do, and I have things I do, and we both have a way of taking forever to do things, and
Yeah.
and we love this. I mean, the scripture comes alive, we get excited, and there's so much we want to share.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, so it's not just you, man.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got the white collar, you got the long sleeves here. Okay. Moving forward. Okay. So when the brethren saw that his father loved him more, they hated him, and they got to the point where they couldn't even speak peaceably to him.
Wow.
They have such a strong hatred that you can't even look at his face. You can't help but see him.
Tough.
And it's really bad when it's gotten to that point, right? I mean, at this point, you're distancing, you're having hateful thoughts in the heart that come up, and you've got the murmuring as soon as he leaves the room type of thing. I mean, you got all kinds of things that can be said and speculated and understood there. I'm glad you brought up the multiple children having, different raisings. I literally just watched a thing the other day about a psychologist. They were asking, they said, how can two kids grow up in a house, have the same raising but come out differently? And it's like, well, first off, we have different personalities, but everything he was saying I had agreed with and I had already thought about, but the way he articulated was so well. And he said, well, two children never have the same parents ever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And he said, because there's so many different factors to consider. You have, are they, like you mentioned, born in different times of the parent's life? What are also the other factors going on? And that's something to consider too. As soon as Jacob had Joseph, that's when he decides to leave Laban, which I had talked about in the last two videos. I was like, It's almost like now it hit him like, I have a child,
right?
And I don't want to raise my child in the environment of where I'm kind of enslaved by this father-in-law who is not being fair and keeps changing the rules and keeps cheating the system. And there's angst and tension there. You keep seeing with the ring straight and the street and the cattle and all these different things going on, and all of a sudden he's like, oh man, I've got 10 kids. I need to get out of here. I got 10, 11 kids. But it took him until that point. It took him until Joseph. So that right away shows a different raising, because the other ones were raised with Laban's roof over Yaakov. There was an umbrella there that is now no longer there. So already Joseph's upbringing is phenomenally different than his 10 older brothers.
Yep.
Okay. So
that's going to affect the kids. That's going to affect the kids. That's going to, that will definitely affect, we don't celebrate Christmas, but I remember back when we did, when you're getting gifts for one, even if there's a vast difference in ages, there was 11 years between Jessica and Austin, my stepson. And man, if you got 2 gifts for one and you got 3 gifts for the other one, never mind that they were different values and everything, it created angst. So you can imagine, getting this coat of many colors, that long sleeve coat, it had all these colors in it that were very, very expensive. You also have to understand that when Jacob was under that bondage of Laban, he didn't have the finances. But later we began to see God was always blessing him. But man, once he got out from under the shackles, it just began to explode. Yeah,
that's true. There is a flourishing after that for sure. Yeah. Okay, so Joseph has these dreams, right? And most people, even non-believers, know the dreams, but just in case for anybody who's maybe listening at some point, either now or later, is not aware, you look at Genesis 37, you can see word for word that give you the dreams here. And I've got a question for you before we move forward too far past this, but he's got binding sheaves in the field, Joseph's dream, right?
Mm-hmm.
And his 10 older brothers, well, actually 11, right?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I wanted to bring up later. But you've got the sheaves in the field, and Joseph stands upright, and the other ones bow to it. And then he tells them about this, and of course they don't like it, right? And then he dreams another dream, and he tells them again, which it's kind of like, first off, you tell them a dream that self-interprets. It's not like they were like, oh, I wonder what that means. They knew exactly what and they're like, oh, of course, that's the imaginations of your heart. You would want us to bow down to you.
They were already mad enough where they couldn't speak to him, and now
he brings this to their attention. And so,
twice.
Okay, so
wait, there's more.
you were so excited about sharing the dream, you didn't think it through. Okay, but now a second time you have the dream and you didn't keep it to yourself. There's so many different ways you could take this. Was it sin? Was it not? Was he being proudful? Was he just excited? Honestly, Jeff, this past 2 weeks, I'm more of the opinion that it wasn't so much necessarily sinful, but rather a prophetic, godly moment where they needed to hear the prophecy.
Yes.
And therefore it was going to be spoken through Joseph. Now, whether or not Joseph was aware that the Spirit was speaking through him to do that, I can only guess, but it's kind of pointless for me to speculate.
Most of the time, we don't know. Most of the time, we don't know. I don't think
that's what I'm saying. He could be speaking through and you don't know. So, did he have an inkling? Did he not? I don't know. But I'm of the opinion at the moment that this was meant to be, this needed to be happening. Therefore, it wasn't necessarily sinful. Not that there are other things that you could, combine that. But anyhow, so they said, are you going to really reign over us, right? And so he dreams another dream and he tells them again, now there's 11 stars and the sun and the moon. And he told his dad as well as his brethren. And then the dad rebukes him saying, what is this, your dream that not just your brethren, but myself and your mother also bow down to you? And so now they've all heard it, right? And you've got 2 dreams, Jeff.
Yep.
Okay, so according to Torah, we need a second witness.
There we go.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I think that's worth stating here. And I do find it interesting. I'm going to state it now just in case I forget later. You've got not only is this applicable dream where they do actually bind sheaves, that's part of their work. They're working with wheat. They have grains in their household and stuff like that. And they have flocks and things like that. And you've got the stars and the moon and the sun. These are things that would have been appointing seasons for them. This is something they would have been paying attention to, not just for those type of reasons, but you also, as shepherds out in the day, there's only so much for you to pay attention to. So you're going to be, these are things, this isn't foreign symbology is what I'm getting at. Okay. This relates to them at where they're at. Yes, it is a timing clue, Karen. It does show them some things, but also on top of that, is it not wheat grains that is part of the end of the book here? When it comes to them bowing down to Joseph, is it not also about wheat grains? So it's not just a relatable, but it's also significant even in the symbology there and the literal, So I find that very interesting. The work of their hands, it would be the symbology, and then you have the actual, not so metaphorical, but literal, the actual grain. So I just wanted to get that in there, but I also find it interesting that even though the dad rebukes him, he walks away observing the saying. So he's still contemplating, is this of God? Whereas the brethren seem to dismiss, right? Or at least out of hate dismiss. And we do see them, there's something I want to point out later that makes me think that they did wonder if it was of God, and they wanted to go up against that. They wanted to make sure that it would not be fulfilled.
One thing I look at with this is I'm always looking to see Yeshua and all this. Yeshua's own town didn't really grab a hold of it. He's the Messiah. His own brothers, his own half brothers didn't grab a hold of it until much later. But again, I think, man, there's so many similarities between Joseph and Yeshua that it's just amazing.
It's to the point where you can't count them, Jeff. I was going to list them out. I was going to list them out for tonight's show, but I spent hours on trying to get all the things down in my notes that I wanted to discuss that I didn't have the time, because I was like, there's so many. So I was hoping that the Spirit would remind me of some of the ones that I thought were really cool, because there's so many. So many where Joseph is the type, the foreshadowing of Yeshua in so many ways. It's not even funny. I mean, already so far where we're at, favored beloved son, right? Favored beloved son, arraigned in a special way that stands out from the rest. right?
Yep.
So, and you and I have talked about spiritual garments before and
Yeah.
things of that nature, and how often scripture, even when it talks about physical, like when you have Samuel and Saul and things like that, and it's talking about a physical garment, there's still a bigger significance of the spiritual garment that is being symbolized there in the act. So as to say that the physical is mirroring the spiritual and not the other way around. Okay, so with that all being said, the brethren go to feed the father's flock in Shechem.
Yep.
Okay, they're supposed to be in Shechem. And Israel says to Joseph, they're supposed to be in Shechem today. Can you go report? Go do your job. And
hey, brother, you froze up there a little bit, or maybe I froze. One of us froze. Guys, if you can see Ian.
it didn't freeze up to me until you said that, and then it froze. How are we
Okay.
doing now? Can you hear me?
You're back. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I got fireworks going on over out here, so I don't know if that's affecting it or the rain. We've got rain right now too.
Okay.
So anyways, so he goes to Shechem to check on the flock, and Genesis 37 says a certain man found him, and he was wandering the field looking for his brethren. And he says, "What do you seek?" And I think it's Jasher, isn't it? Jasher that actually said that that's an angel, not just a random stranger.
Right.
But that it was an angel sent by God to direct Joseph in the direction, because this is all a part of God's plan, to save the family, the tribes,
Right.
and to place Israel in Egypt for down the road. I mean, this is all master woven plan and so intricate, and all these details, things need to come together. So I think that's Jasher that says that.
Right.
So he goes, yeah, I'm looking for my brethren. And the angel man, what have you, says, go down to Dothan. That's where they're at. They're in Dothan, right? So they're not where they're supposed to be, right? Yeah. I mean, it's not a big deal. It's not something to really emphasize, but they're literally not where they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's already kind of raising a red flag, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think about Samson all the time when I read this. The other children of Jacob, they were in the places they weren't supposed to be, and getting these things teed up. So, but at the same time, God's going to use every bit of this. None of it took him by surprise. He was using and orchestrating even their rebellion and their sin to help move his purpose. So that's cool.
For sure. For the good of all, things are brought together and have a purpose, right? What is that? Romans 8:28 or something like that?
All things work together for the good to those that love
work
God.
Together. Not that they're good isolated, but they come together in his purpose. Right. Okay. So when they see him from afar off, which I think I honed in a lot on the last video, so I'm not going to go too much into it tonight, but they see him from afar off, and you already see that their hatred is steaming, right? They said that they couldn't even speak to him peaceably just from seeing him from a distance, not him again.
How did they recognize him? How did they recognize him from afar off? That stinking coat.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, you got the rainbow coat. Nobody's got the rainbow coat.
That's it, man. That's it.
But they're sitting there looking at him going, he's even walking the way that he walks. Like he's got,
look at that walk. Look at that. Who does he think he is?
You know what I mean? Because they already think that he thinks he's better than them. He's dreaming that they're going to bow down to him.
Yeah.
And so.
And these aren't kids. These are guys in their mid to late 20s that are picking on a teenager. Yeah.
Possibly a little bit older. Yeah.
Some could even be in their 30s. Yeah.
There's a lot of the numbers and math on some of these things that leave some blank spaces. There's certain things we can figure out, and there's certain things that we're like, well, it's between this and this, like the age difference between Joseph and Benjamin. I mean, you're looking at anywhere from like 5 to 10 to maybe even a little bit more than 10 years difference, and it's kind of like we've narrowed it down to that, but we can only speculate as to which way we're leaning when we're trying to close it in closer. But they see him from afar off, right? And it kind of reminds me of that video that we had done, that I had done about seeing from afar off, talking about the fig tree and how it looks good from afar, but it's far from good, things like that. Yeah. They're seeing him from afar off, and they're already, I mean, there's so much that can be said right there.
Yeah.
Because they're making their judgments without actually looking at the fruit. You're looking at Joseph, the tree, from far off. And you've already got your preconceived notion, and the hatred is already starting to come out. And before he's even up and close enough to them to talk, they're conspiring to kill him. Jeff, this isn't, we should prank him, we should slap him around, we should yell at him. They've already started conspiring to murder their brother
And can I throw in here? It says they conspired against him. It didn't say that the devil made them do it. It didn't say there was a little demon on their shoulder urging them on. This is part of the flesh. This is part of the fallen nature of man. They were so we have so many people all the time blaming everything on the devil. The devil did this. The devil made no. Most of the time, it is your stinking unregenerated, unredeemed flesh. And people don't believe in raising the dead. You guys do it all the time. You're bringing that old man back up. They conspired against him to slay him. This was their own works. That definitely wasn't that. I think that if there was something going on here in the spirit where a spirit was nudging them to do this, I think it would have said that. But it doesn't say that at all.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, you do see it saying that they conspired to slay him. So look, behold, the dreamer cometh. The dreamer, right? There's some tongue in cheek there. There's some hatred. You've got some wordplay, but you also have that. You could just spit out the poison and distaste there. Behold, the dreamer cometh, right? So let's slay him, cast him into some pit, right? Which I argue in the last two videos was actually an emptied well, and I talk all about why I think that is, and there's spiritual significance there about a well that is not filled and how it has no purpose, how it's an empty. I mean, you've got Jude and Second Peter talk about empty wells and things like that. And there's all kinds of cool stuff there. But anyways, they're already deciding. We'll throw him in a pit, in a well. And we'll say that some evil beast. So they've already come up with the plot before he's gotten there, right?
Yeah.
And Reuben hears them and says, "No, we shouldn't kill him." And he said, "Don't shed the blood. Just put him in the pit in the wilderness. Don't lay any hand. That way, it's not held against us, right? And that way, we can rid him of our hands."
Loopholes. Just a loophole, man. We didn't kill him. We just put him in a place where he died.
Right. Well, Reuben here, and I argue this in the last two videos, but I personally believe that Reuben is trying to gain favor back with Jacob because he's in a bad light with Jacob because of his indiscreet relationships with Bilhah, his stepmother, the mother of a couple of his brethren. Right. I mean, he slept with her, which I have some questions about that on your thoughts on this later on. If we get to tonight, I don't know. We're already like 40 minutes into one chapter.
Yeah, we're going. Let's keep going. I'm good.
I know. We gotta. Okay. So I think Reuben was trying to gain favor again. I think that's why that's my belief, is that he was trying to talk him into, send him in the pit. It says that he had expected to come back and save him. I think he wanted to be the saving hero and get back in the graces of Jacob. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Okay. So they toss him into a pit. There's no water in it, right? Again, another clue that I think it was a well. And then they look and they see Ishmaelites are coming. Now, Reuben's no longer in the picture at this moment. He walked off and did what? I don't know, but he's not in the picture at the moment. And then Judah, right? We're going to try to refrain from all kinds of jokes, and I've got Line of Judah in my blood, but every time I read this, I'm like, of course it was Judah that thinks we can make coin out of this. We can make a purpose. Let's logically make a profit here. Of course, Judah's the one to come up with that, right?
Yeah.
He says, what profit is it if we slay our brother? I mean, there's logic there. He said, we're going to kill him and then conceal his blood. No. Let's make a few silver coins, right? So, okay, stripped of his robe. Who does that sound like?
Yeah, that's Yeshua there, buddy.
Beat up, sent into a pit. Now, you can do that a couple different ways. You could argue that Yeshua coming to earth is like the favored son being sent to a pit. And then you can also talk about in the death and resurrection, you've got going into the pit, right?
Right.
So there's a couple different views there because, it's much like Moshe leaving the palace that he grew up in to go into the wilderness. You've got that leaving that luxury and going into the wilderness, and Joseph's not choosing this, but Yeshua did.
Yeah.
And unlike Moshe, he's not leaving an evil palace.
Yeah.
Yeshua left heaven. And came to earth, man. That you want to talk about leaving luxury and going into the wilderness, choosing to do so, right? And so you get stripped of your robe, right? They tore his robe, right?
Yeah.
Which one am I talking about? I'm talking about both, right? They tore his robe.
Absolutely.
And it's got blood on it, right? Some say it's goat, but some argue it could have been a lamb, which I think would even be more symbolic.
Right. Yep.
Okay. So, and you've got Judah selling him out. For coins, for silver coins, right? I mean, I don't have to point that out, do I? Right? Okay.
No, then you got Judas selling Yeshua out for coin. Yeah,
right. So they sell him to the Midianites who are heading to Egypt, and I think that they knew that. So Reuben returns to get him back out, and he sees that he's not there, and now he's freaking out. And he said,
I agree with what you're saying earlier. I think Reuben was trying to get back in. I think Reuben was like, okay, we'll throw him in the pit. It'll appease my brothers. I'll come back. I'll fetch him, and everything will be fine. That's what I think Reuben was going on.
He wanted to be the hero in the story. I mean, I used to read this years back as like, oh, he saw a heated situation, didn't know how to stop it completely, right? And he's the firstborn, and he's sitting there going like, this is my job to save. I really thought it was a sympathetic, but 9 years here we are later, I'm sitting there going, no, I think some of that was personal gain. He wanted to, I mean, I could be wrong, but I keep getting that feeling now, knowing a little bit, having read the story many, many times over. I'm sitting there going, no, he just got in trouble about Bilhah.
Yeah.
Is he trying to get back into the graces of his father? I mean, you got to keep in mind, his father's getting older.
Yep.
Inheritance and things like that. Reuben's firstborn.
Yeah.
Is he going to get passed along, which it does happen.
Yeah.
Right? If that was his fear, it's actually very legit because he does. He gets passed up for the priesthood. He gets passed up for the physical land. He gets passed up for the spiritual blessing. Some argue that it got split up between Simeon, Levi, Judah, and Joseph, right? And then some others argue that it all went to Joseph. But either way you want to see it, it did pass up Reuben, the firstborn, the one you'd expect, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Reuben. And instead, it kind of looks like it went Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph.
Yeah.
I mean, 10 in between there, you know? So anyways, they bring back the coat with the goat or lamb blood on it, and they act like they don't know what happened. They say, oh, we can't tell. Is this it? As if, you know, rainbow coats are common back then.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, Jacob recognizes it, which makes me think also that he made it physically. He knows the seams. He knows where he messed up or didn't mess. I could be wrong, but I'm just thinking if he did make it, all the more reason it could prove to him like, no, this wasn't some foreigner's robe who also had the money for these threads, but that he actually made it himself. So you've got the death of the son, or at least the supposed death, which again we can also talk about with Yeshua. Yeshua is believed to have been dead, and later on you find out he's alive.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I'm not saying that Yeshua didn't actually die.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, but you see what I'm saying? There's this another representation there of supposed to be dead and gone forever, the mourning thereof, and you find out later on, no, he's alive. The one who's going to save the family, with the bread of life, because it's a life or death situation at the end of this book here with that bread in Egypt, the bread of life, right? The favored son who was believed to be dead, the savior of the family and of the world, really at that point for what that is. With the bread of life, it's supposed to be dead, but is actually alive, right? And I mean, there's so many things we can get into. Okay, so the Midianites take him to Egypt, sell him to Potiphar, right? So who's an officer of Pharaoh and a captain of the guard. Real quick, have you ever looked at that word officer?
Oh, I can't. All right, just go ahead. I have, but so the word officer there could also, I think, Ian, you may have froze up a little bit. I'll go ahead and talk about it. The word officer there can also mean a eunuch, and so that's a very interesting concept, because we know the story of Potiphar and his wife with Joseph, how Potiphar's wife tries to come on to Joseph and all this kind of stuff. I see you're back, Ian, but so I don't want to steal all the thunder. But that can also mean a eunuch, and so so why was Potiphar's wife being all Jessica Rabbit up on Joseph, right?
Jessica Rabbit.
I like that, huh? Yeah.
I liked her when I was a little one, Jessica Rabbit. I'm not gonna lie, Jeff. That gives you an idea of my age. But
there we go. Yeah.
But anyhow, I wanted to ask you tonight, Jeff. Yah willing, I'm gonna get you with something tonight. Each video I try to get you with at least something. One of these tonight, one of these things is gonna get you, and you're gonna be like, okay.
Hey, can I show you something real quick? I know we kind of skipped chapter 38, right?
Yeah, I want to skip 38.
Let me just share this real quick. Hang on, let me go back over here, and we'll stop this screen share. Hang on, and I want to bring this up. I don't know if I may have something on you, brother.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Let's see.
That's not as fun for me, but I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah. let's see. Can I switch over to this? Nope, wrong. That's my new book. Hang on. All right. So we know that Chuck Missler brought out in Genesis chapter 5, right? We see, I didn't do it right. Genesis 5, we see the whole thing with the hidden prophecy of Yeshua coming in the names of from Adam all the way to Noah, right?
Sure.
This is something that Chuck Missler brought out, and I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it. He talks about a lot of the equidistance letters, spelling stuff out. This is in chapter 38. So just real quick, if you take each one of these are 49 letters apart. This is back in Genesis chapter 38, guys. It spells out Boaz, Ruth, Obed, Jesse, and David. It gives the lineage of David right here in the 38th chapter of Genesis, and they're in chronological order. That's not a coincidence. Right. I think that's just a thumbprint of God. I just wanted to bring that out, and I'll pop that out. I wanted to have that up so people can see it. I had not heard that before, but when I was going through doing some study, I saw that and I'm like, whoa, check that out. There's a little bit more with that, but I don't want to take up too much time.
Right.
So
no, that was cool. That was cool. That's definitely a good contribution on that chapter rather than going in one of the other ones where I was like, man, I didn't want to get into this tonight because there's all kinds of different views on 38 there.
Oh yeah.
But no, that's pretty cool. I have never seen that before. To be fair though, I'm not usually one to get big into Bible codes and stuff like that. So you could show me all kinds of Bible codes and I'm like, nope, haven't seen it before. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so 39, you got Joseph and Potiphar's wife. A lot of people are familiar with this story, right? But so here's the things I wanted to bring up. He's brought down to Egypt. Okay, so very first thing I want to bring up, and there might be somebody who hears this and doesn't like me saying this, okay? But almost every video, even the ones that I thoroughly enjoyed, have people claiming how much time Joseph was in Potiphar's house. And I keep looking at the scripture and I'm like, where are you getting this from? I don't see anything in the scripture, maybe in the extra biblical text, but I don't treat extra biblical like scripture. I'll consider them, but I don't treat them like scripture. So when you tell me he was there for 1 year or 2 years, because usually people assume it's 1 or 2 years, and I'm sitting there going, well, wait a minute, hold on a second. Okay. It says that Yahovah was with Joseph and he was a prosperous man and was in the house of the master of the Egyptian, right, under Potiphar. And his master saw that Yahovah was with him. Is that something that happens right away? Okay, so he sees that God's with him. He sees that Yahovah made all that he did to prosper in his hand. Okay, is that something that happens in the blink of an eye? Okay, I mean, these are things we need. And Jeff, I'm talking about teachers, preachers, and pastors.
Yeah.
I'm not angry or upset. I'm just a little annoyed with pastors, preachers, and teachers. I'm sitting there going, hey, guys, we all try to be real careful on covering our corners and saying, as it seems to me, in my opinion, where I'm at right now, things like that. I think this because of this, and I feel safe in saying that, but this I'm wondering about. And then all of a sudden just arbitrarily throwing out, well, he was there for 2 years and then he went to prison. And I'm sitting there going, where are you getting this from?
Yeah.
Where are you getting this from? And I've got my own speculative theory, and I could be way off, and that's fine. But to give out a number and just act like it's fact kind of bothers me. And I came across that in almost every video, and they were all different numbers too, Jeff. That's the funnier thing. Right. So I'm sitting there going, you guys aren't even agreeing on the same resource if you guys are using a resource at all. But okay, so anyways, it shows that Potiphar was able to discern that Yah is with him and makes all that prospers in his hand, which makes me think, as it seems to me, there's me covering my corners, right? In my mind, I'm sitting there going, he gave Joseph some tasks, and it worked out better than he expected. So then he gave him some more responsibilities, and it worked better than he could expect. And because God is blessing the house of Potiphar for the sake of Joseph, which is what the scriptures tell us, he starts realizing, it's a logical business mindset. This is like, like I'm Hebrew spiritually, but also blood-wise, right? So I can say this, it's a bit of a Jewish mindset of like, oh, if you see something working, it's a logical understanding. Anybody who has a business sense thinks, well, you want to put more into that. You got an employee that's top notch. You promote him, right? So he starts giving more responsibilities, and he starts giving Joseph over things. He was sold as a slave, Jeff.
Yeah.
So already we're seeing supernaturally through Joseph exemplifying as an example of what it's like to walk in the footsteps of Yeshua, in the instructions of the Father, to walk as the Father instructs us to.
Yeah.
and blessings raining down upon it to the point where, you know, it's not because of Joseph's preaching, but because of how he is, his mannerisms. This is something we like to talk about all the time with Joseph, Daniel, and David. I love these guys, and I love bringing this up all the time. All throughout Joseph, Daniel, and David, you see all these secular kingdoms saying, you know, I don't know about his God or whatever, but that man behaved himself wisely. He has wisdom, understanding, put him in charge of stuff because it works out amazingly.
Yeah.
You know, and so that we see that with Joseph. I'm just of the opinion Joseph wasn't put in charge of the entire house of Potiphar in the span as short as just 1 year.
No,
you know, I just don't see that happening.
I can say this, as you know, I'm usually a supervisor, no matter what kind of job position I'm in, and it takes time for me as a supervisor to not only recognize that talent, but to also promote that talent. But you also have to train them. It's not like, hey, this guy's great at processing bills. You know what? You got to train him. Hey, he's great at handling customer service. You got to go in and hone those things. So I agree. I don't think this was. He was a captain of the guard, so he's not there all the time either. So he's out fighting, he's out doing stuff. You know, whether or not he was a eunuch, we don't know. But this is all building up to, hey, Joseph ends up kind of being the man of the house while the man of the house isn't there. We've got Potiphar's wife, you know, Jessica Rabbit, doing her thing, trying to come on to him. I'd really like to get into that a little bit, but go ahead.
We will in a second, Jeff. Just give me a second here. Okay, but it says that he made him overseer over his entire house, all that he put into his hand. And okay, so it says that over all that he had. Okay, and Jeff. So I think this is something I brought up in the last video, but you know, how many people can we say, okay, maybe you don't have servants, maybe you don't have slaves, but let's just imagine it, you know, use employee if you have to use employee, use maid if you have to use a maid. You're putting them in charge of your finances.
Yeah.
You're the owner of a company and you've got an employee and you put them in charge of your own personal finances. What are the odds of that? And how fast are you going to do that? Right. Yeah. So it says all that he had, and it came to pass, right, that that Yah blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake, right, which is something that we should be praying for and seeking for in our own lives. It shows that through the leading of the instructions of the Father and obedience and paying, if we focus on him, things around us should be getting blessed to the point where we may even be favored, even though they may or may not connect it to our beliefs. They'll know, like, hey, he talks about the Bible sometimes and this flat earth, whatever. I don't care. He behaves himself wisely. He takes care of everything. He exceeds expectation time and time again, and everything flourishes under his hand. I'd be a fool not to give him more responsibility and to continue those blessings. He said that a blessing upon all day in the house and in the field, right? So everything. He's in charge of everything, you know. And it said, get this, I love how David Guzik went into this. I've been watching David Guzik stuff just to see what he saw that I didn't see and to hear some things. And man, it was a brilliant series. I'll probably put the link in the comments later. He said he knew not aught that he had. He didn't even care to know. I mean, he's got fields and servants and the house and who knows
Joseph's
how much he's
doing investments. He's doing extra side hustles. He's got everything. He's got 3 or 4 things on Amazon for the guy. He's got YouTube videos going on. He's got real estate deals. You name it. Joseph is doing it for Potiphar, and I think that's incredible.
I agree, Kathy, on this comment here. I figure we get to that in a minute, but I agree with that. Okay, but anyways, he knew not aught that he had save the bread which he did eat. So Guzik says, wouldn't it be nice? You have all this stuff and you wake up and you're like, oh, do I have to worry about my finances? No, he's got it. Do I have to worry about my taxes, my bills? No, he's got it. And the only thing on your mind is, what am I going to eat today? You know what I mean? Like, if that's all you have on your mind and you're in charge of all this, I mean, that just shows how much he trusted Joseph. And he was
a smart man. He was a smart man. Remember, he was the captain of the guard. That's not just an easy, hey, you know, I went on Indeed and applied for it. That's an earned position over years of trust with Pharaoh. I mean, I think that's a testament right there to his wisdom and his patience and his understanding.
And I think it took time to build that relationship of trust in order to be over the entire house. You know, 1 year, 2 years, I'm not buying it. Right. No. I'm just not buying it. I mean, I've heard some pastors in the past couple of weeks looking at some of the stuff they're saying, you know, and then a month later, and I'm like, man, where do you even see that at all? and a month. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
He was in charge of the entire house.
Context.
Did you
man.
forget that he bought him as a slave? You know,
Yeah.
it just drives me nuts. I mean, it's not like the sermon wasn't good or something, but I'm just like, dude, you can't be saying stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, anyways, so now we get to your Jessica Rabbit, right? And it starts with her eyes. It says she cast her eyes on him, and then it goes from eyes, heart, and then out the mouth, right? And that what Scripture tells us is that it's conceived in the heart, and the imagination is the heart, and this is where the words come out, is from the treasure of the heart, whether it be good or evil, right? That's where you speak. And so now it's gone from taking in, bringing in, and then manifesting out, right? And so you have actual creation of, or desire, trying to create that desire that literally started with just taking in the fabrication of what reality is, seeing it, and it coming through your portals of your eyes and then coming out the other portal of your mouth. I mean, there's so much we could go into with that, but I'm going to leave it be. But it starts with her eyes and then comes to her mouth. And then later on, we have her physically with her hands, because words is not doing it. She's coming on to him multiple times, right?
I would even argue that Joseph's not the first one.
Yeah, probably.
Do you notice how bold she is in doing this in Potiphar's house? I'm saying that this isn't her first rodeo. This isn't the first time she's done this. This is the first time she's been told no.
Yeah, which makes it all the more desirable and challenging and interesting. And there's all kinds of things we could get into with that, but. You got eyes, mouth, and it says that she's hitting on him, and he says, you know, there's none greater in this house than I, and your husband's kept nothing from me except for you. Like, and I talked about this in the last videos, but his focus is, why would I sin against God? It's not even, he's like, no, that'd be wrong to do. The master trusts me with all these things that'd be stupid for me to do. And then on top of that, you're the only thing that he has kept from me. That's messed up. But why would I sin against God? And that's his real main point, which makes me think also that she was attractive. And I think that that's part of why you see him fleeing from the lust of the flesh here, and not just simply saying no and going back to work and walking away. I think he ran because I think there was a fleshly, she's not bad looking. And I talked about it in the last two videos, but I speculate that maybe in her last brazen approach, right before she grabs onto him, maybe she's wearing something more revealing. Maybe she's not wearing anything at all. She made sure that all the servants weren't there. I mean, it doesn't say that, but it says that nobody was in the house with them. And it's like, well, who do you think made that happen? You know, if the hubby's not home, who's in charge? And it's not like Joseph told everybody to leave. And
you know, this is something else too with this. And I highlighted that just for a minute, as she spoke to Joseph day by day. Listen, sin will try to wear you down unless you do what Joseph does and just comes up against it. You can't flirt around with it. You can't just just tiptoe around the tulips. You need to, if it is sin and you know it's sin, you need to draw that line and say, look, this is sin. This is going to cause aught against me and my Creator. I can't do this. I love him more. You know, without that mentality, if you start trying to be nice, if you start trying to compromise, it's the boss's wife. I got to be nice to her. I'll let her grab my arm. I'll let her, twirl my beard a little bit. I'll let her do whatever, whatever floats her boat. I'm not going to have relations with her. I'm going, but the more you compromise, and we do this, we all do this in our own lives from time to time. We compromise to make people feel good. And you know what? Every time that I've ever done that in my life, Ian, I have suffered, and I have come to a place where God doesn't bless me. And I end up having to repent and come to God and ask forgiveness, because listen, if you compromise a little bit, if hey, I don't want to hurt this person's feelings. I don't want to do this. You know what? You're putting that person's feelings, that situation above your love for God. And listen, God is jealous, and he's not going to let anybody else take that place. So,
and there's all kinds of reasons that we can try to tell ourselves in the flesh of, I've got this. I'm not going to let it get too far.
Yeah.
And we can talk about it being sexual lust and stuff like that. But when Scripture talks about lust of the flesh, it's talking about everything that the flesh would desire to do that it goes against God. It's not just a sexual thing. So if sexual temptation is sitting there going, it's been a long time, or that's not an issue, whatever. There's other things that would still be considered lust of the flesh that the flesh would desire to sit in and just simply say, well, I'm not crossing the line. I'm just not running away. And Scripture tells us, flee from the lusts of the flesh. And interestingly enough, especially in the context of sexual immorality, Scripture really suggests flight, run, do not stand around and try to deal with it. You take off. And that's exactly what Joseph did. So of course now she screams out, right? And then she makes up this story and accuses him of sexual assault, right? And a lot of the pastors will say rape, but I don't see that she says rape. I think she's saying sexual assault, that he tried, that she screamed, and that he stopped. Yeah. So that to me is technically sexual assault. Not that it really matters tit for tat on those details of this context. Yeah. Other contexts, it's a different story, but for this situation, it's not as big of a deal. But I would say that it seemed like she was claiming he assaulted. But anyhow, she had hands on his garment. Whether he supernaturally pulled out of it like Chad Schaefer has suggested, or maybe he did a spin move like I used to think in football and was able to pull his arms out of the sleeves while he spun around. Whatever the situation was, the garment's left behind.
She's coming on to him like she's got like 16 arms and hands, and he's able to get out of there. And she grabs a hold of his garment, and man, it's just like the enemy. The enemy's just going to lie. The enemy's going to fabricate some more stuff. And to who was that made the comment a while ago that said that, hey, listen, if Joseph and Potiphar had not had such a good relationship, he would have had him immediately killed like that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that was one of the things I was actually going to bring up. I can't remember if it was Kathy or Karen or one of the other listeners that have tuned in many times before, but that's definitely something that I was going to bring up before, that it seems like, if Potiphar really thought that Joseph was actually guilty, which is a sad situation, because now you have, if that is indeed the case, which it seems to be, then Potiphar is angry and upset for two different reasons here. A, he's stuck with his wife, and B, he's lost Joseph. So this is not a situation of how dare you try to touch my wife. This is a situation of looking at his wife saying, I know you, we have a history, I know what's going on here. How dare you force my hand to get rid of my number one person? He's the reason why everything has flourished. You would ruin this most amazing good thing we had going.
I think we have a picture here in verse 20 that backs all that up. That backs up that Potiphar wasn't really mad at him. I think Potiphar knows his wife. He knows that she's a floozy, and he knows this is probably made up. But because the accusation was made in public, he can't disgrace, he can't dishonor his wife. Right. We don't know her standing either, right? I think here it says, and Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison. Right. This is a special prison. This is not just regular prison. This is not county jail. This is a place where the king's prisoners were bound. This is even above like a federal penitentiary, right? This has got the golf course. I'm just kidding, but this is a different place than we would normally see normal prisoners go. And so I think that's something also to bring out, is that even though Potiphar was having to put him into a prison, take him away to help save face with his wife, who knows, with his family, who knows, whatever goes on with all that, he puts him in a place where Potiphar knows Joseph's not going to be really messed with too bad there. It's still prison. Right. It's still prison.
That's pretty cool. I hadn't got that before, though. It is a specific. It says with the king's men. That's interesting.
Yeah.
And, so you see in verse 6 there that he really trusts Joseph, that he doesn't even know what he has, and he's allowing him to be in charge of everything. And lo and behold, Yah's favor on Joseph does the exact same thing in the prison. Okay, so again, why it's assumed. Okay, so we only have one timing clue, okay, and it was actually brought up in the chat earlier today. And again, with the teachers and pastors and preachers and stuff, like, okay, we have some things, but make sure you're paying attention to it when you say certain things, or at least hear me out this time around, okay? They'll say, well, he was in prison for 2 years. Well, here's the thing. We can say, in my opinion, he was in prison for at least 2 years.
Right.
Okay, but I would argue scripturally, we can argue that he was actually in prison for at least more than 2 years. And I'm going to say that for a couple different reasons, but it says that the baker and the butler, which is not the same as what people think of butler nowadays with the Western civilization and stuff like that. It's a little bit of difference, more of the guy with the key to the wine cellar, the guy who's in charge of the drinks. You know, he had the food and the drinks, and I have a reason why I think that is too. But anyways, it says that they were in there for a season before they had those dreams. And then it says that 2 years later, after Joseph does the interpretation of those dreams, that the baker remembers and brings it up to Pharaoh, and then he's brought forward. And at that point, we see in the scripture that it says that Joseph was 30 when he was brought forward in front of Pharaoh. Okay, so we have the age of 30 being brought in front of Pharaoh. We have age 17 stolen. Okay, so we have at the very least 13 years, and that's if you're talking birthday to birthday, which I highly doubt. Right, so we're talking a little bit more than 13, maybe closer to 14. Okay, something to think about. Okay, so did he spend more time in Potiphar's house?
Yeah.
Did he spend more time in prison? Well, if he was in Potiphar's house for a month and prison for 2 years, where'd the other 12 years go? Because that's what I want to ask a lot of pastors and teachers. Where'd those years go? We're talking more than a decade that they're discounting. Okay, and I have a theory about it, and it could be wrong, and we'll get there in a second. But I just wanted to bring that up. When I said the 2 years in prison, we know that from the time he interpreted the dreams of the baker and the butler to when the baker remembers was 2 years. And we know that they were in prison for a season, which could mean any amount of short time. Right. So I just wanted to bring those up, man, because it's little things that, you know.
Since you brought this up, let me just throw this in here. I see some parallels between Abraham and Joseph here as well. You know, how long was from the time of the promise until when things came to pass with Isaac being born? Same thing here with Joseph. We have all these years, all these different, two massive different trials going on in his life. What do you think, Ian? Do you think that that's playing on his mind when he's? I mean, maybe before Potiphar's wife really starts coming on to him, he's like, I'm getting there. God is promoting me. I'm fixing to be that sheep, or they're going to be bound down to me. I'm fixing to be that, all these things, and then bam, Potiphar's wife does this. He gets thrown into prison. Hey, he has to start over again, right?
Yeah.
And then slowly things begin to work out again. I mean, just think about, guys, listen. One of the prayers that Yeshua prayed for Peter was that I pray that your faith doesn't fail. We need to be praying that for each other. I pray that your faith doesn't fail, because look, you may come up to some things in your life and you may think, man, this is going great. This is going great. And then bam, you hit something and you're like, where's God? Where's this plan? Where's this vision that he's given on the inside of my heart? Got to have the stick to itness. You got to keep going. You got to keep that faith. You got to keep staying in there.
True and trust.
Yeah.
And, because this is all part of the plan. And you got to think too, was Jessica Rabbit here? Was she part of the test?
Yeah.
I mean, how would this have played out had he given in?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you do have the roller coaster. I'm glad you're bringing that up. That it's the whole, are you riding the roller coaster with your emotions, or are you staying steady, knowing that the water can be still or there can be storms, but either way, Yeshua commands them both. You know what I mean? I'm glad you brought that up. And that's definitely something that we need to be thinking about and keeping on our mind. That's a timely word for every time. You know what I mean?
Oh man. Hey, we talked about that at the beginning of the program. Gosh, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know if it's making any difference. And then God gives you a reminder, gives you something like that. How many times, how many conversations, how many times at night was Joseph crying out to the Father? Think about these things happen. It didn't take 2 months. I'm so glad you brought that out. This is over a decade.
And he was probably crying out louder than he was in that well, Jeff.
There you go.
I said when they tossed him in that well, right? Yeah. Or for those who haven't watched my other videos and are not convinced of what I'm talking about, that pit, right? That cistern. Go look at the word pit. Right. Go look at the context, or check out the video, whatever. They threw him that well, and then they sat down to eat. Mm-hmm. Okay, and he would have been shouting out, "Guys, I'm here. I'm sorry. I take it back. I won't. I was wrong about mentioning those dreams, or, I don't think I'm better than you. I'll start working harder. Please. You get that, the training that they do on the TV and stuff like that, where they tell you, if somebody's trying to, kidnap you or kill you or whatever, if you have a chance to try to remind them that you're a human, well, you kind of usually think like that subconsciously anyhow, without even being trained to do that. You want to remind them like, hey, I'm a person, without even thinking it that way. So Joseph was doing that, and they're just eating a meal, and you had been shouting out, and then they finally go to let him out.
Simon's throwing some like chicken bones down at him and trying to hit him in the head. Here we go.
And they start to help him up, and he's like, all right, finally, I'm so sorry, I learned my lesson, never again. And then they sell him, and those shouts in that well probably didn't compare to Joseph, and to Joseph crying out to the Father, why am I in prison? Why am I in a dungeon?
Yeah.
And for false accusations, wrongfully accused.
Yeah.
Because and that's a study all in of itself that I've done before. That'd be a fun video to do, talking about wrongfully accused in the scripture and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got Joseph interpreting the two prisoners' dreams, right? It said, and it came to pass after these things. There's been a time pass. It's just like Genesis 4. We talk about there's a lapse of time, but we don't know how much time, right? And the butler of the king and the baker, right? And if you look at those, like I said, you got the wine cellar guy and the baker's baker. And it says he was wroth against his two officers, against the chief of the butlers and against the chief of the bakers. All right, Jeff, I've got a theory about this.
Okay.
Do you have a theory about this?
I've not thought about that.
Oh, maybe this will get you. Okay, I haven't thought about it either until this week, Jeff. Yeah. Okay, so the Pharaoh, king of Egypt, he's upset with his food guy and his drink guy.
Yeah.
Is it possible that they had come to the understanding that there was a poisoning conspiracy, and they needed to lock away the head of the food and the head of the water of the drink, because they're like, well, we don't know which way it was going to come through, the kitchen or the wine cellar. We're going to put them in prison, the guys who are in charge, and we're going to do our investigations and figure it out.
Wow.
Right.
You know what?
I mean, it's just a theory. It is what it is. I mean, it's either spot on or it's not. And either way, it's not a big deal. But it was just one of those, like, man, I'd never even thought of that before. That's pretty cool. And then if that's the case, then chances are it was through the food, not the wine, right?
Right.
We find out later on that it's a butler who loses his head, or the baker rather. So yeah, it'd be the food, not the wine. So they both had a dream. I said, okay, so look, the captain of the guard charges Joseph with them. He puts him in charge of them, right? Because just like with Potiphar, over time, he was given responsibility, which is, again, crazy, right? In prisons today, whether you're looking at the federal ones or not, like, you can get jobs as like to work in the kitchen or the library once you prove yourself to be trustworthy around certain things and things of that nature. So, I mean, again, this is not a, hey, welcome to the dungeon, here's your job. Oh, it turns out that we pulled out your name out of the hat, and it turns out that you got the one that's in charge of everything. You know what I mean? So I'm not inclined to think that it was right away. Okay, so, and Joseph came in the morning and saw that they were sad, right? The butler and the baker. And he says, why do you look sad? Which also proves to me all the more that this isn't the first day that they got imprisoned.
Right.
Okay. That again, that's me, and someone's going to bring up the 3-day thing, and that's fine, but I've got something on that as well. Okay. But he's saying, why do you look so sadly today? So either it's not their first day, or it is, and Joseph is able to discern this is beyond, I'm bummed out because I'm in prison, which is already pretty bummed out, right? This is not just you don't usually use the word for sad. Oh, I'm sad, I'm in prison. That's not usually the word that you would use for that, right?
What verse are you in right now? I want to make sure I've got it up for the audience.
Okay, I'm on chapter 40, and verse 7 is, why do you look sad today?
Okay.
And so then they tell him that they've dreamed and that there was no interpretation, right? And Joseph says, well, the interpretations belong to God. He's already showing credit, right? And he's saying, if you give me the dreams, God will give me the invitation to give to you. And so the butler says, well, in my dream, I was in my dream, right? And you see that being emphasized here. They talk about how I was in my dream and how that actually indicates to them that it might have had meaning, on top of the fact that, certain dreams you wake up from, whether they're from God or not, you wake up feeling like, man, what was that about? And it sticks to you more than other dreams, and it was one of those like, is there something to that? And so he tells them, he goes, there was a vine before me, and it had 3 branches, and it budded, blossoms shot forth, and then the clusters, right? So, I mean, this is a rapidized
Right.
time lapse of something that would take a lot longer. And these are all things that would be the responsibility of the guy working with the wine cellar, right? You've got the vines that you're curating and taking care of and things like that. And you've also got a Trinity reference here. See it how you will. You've got a past, present, and future, right? You've got the budded, the blossoms, and the clusters, right? And so you got the rapid eyes of the time, and he takes the grapes and he presses them into Pharaoh's cup. This is all part of what his job would have been. And he gives it back to the Pharaoh. And so Joseph says the 3 branches are representing 3 days. And within 3 days, you're going to be brought before the Pharaoh, and you'll be brought back to being his butler as you were before. So, of course, the baker hears this, gets all excited, says, hey, I was in my dream too. And I had 3 baskets on my head with baked meats. And you look at that word baked meats, because I did this time. I hadn't before, but I did this time. And it shows that you're talking like meat pies or something. I mean, it says it could be fruit or meat, but like I'm going to argue strongly, and I'm not going to even get too much into it. But it later on talks about flesh. Okay. That's not a word that you're going to use for fruits. Okay. So I believe it was meats. And I have a reason why I think it was.
I think it's foreshadowing. Yeah.
Well, it's wine and flesh, Jeff.
Yep.
Where do we see blood and the body, wine and flesh? Right? Because often in the cartoons they bring up loaves of bread, which preaches really well. You're like, I got the bread and the wine. We're talking communion. We're talking Yeshua's body, and we are talking communion in Yeshua's body, but it's meat, flesh. One of them must die, the flesh.
Yep.
And one continues on, the blood. Right? I'm just saying. I'm just saying. So anyway, so it's the baked meats, and the birds eat them off. And he's like, what's that all about? And he's like, oh, in 3 days, you're going to be hung. You're going to be brought before the Pharaoh, and you're going to be hung. Okay, so here's the thing, right? And so this hits me hard right away, because I've had moments in my walk. Vicky Joy and I used to talk about this a lot, because she gets a laugh out of it, because I like to tell her these stories, and I confide in her things. And I've had experiences in my life, Jeff, and you could probably relate to this, I'm guessing, and probably some of the listeners too. I've been given messages to give to people, good, neutral, negative. Okay. I've word of knowledge, prophecy, dreams, dream interpretations, visions, and some other things. I have experience in all those things, not all the time, but I have some experiences in those things where I was sent to give a message. And, there are those who have religious spirits that are either being used by God or are not, that are very excited to be the messenger. Yeah. Good or bad, they're excited. And you've got those people that they may have even, they might have even deceived their own heart into thinking that they don't take joy into giving an evil message. But it seems very clear when you're on the other side, they're smiling while they're telling you all this stuff that might not even be a message from Yah, or maybe it is, but either way, they're enjoying it and they shouldn't be. I can honestly tell you, Jeff, I've messed up on a lot of things, but I don't remember having joy in me at all to give people negative messages. And I don't seek to give people positive messages. Okay. I've got my things I've messed up on, and I got things I got to work on and stuff like that. But I tend to put my life on the microscope to the point where I don't want to look at somebody else's homework. I don't have time for that. I have no interest in that, good or negative. Either way, it can mess me up, because if it's good, I'm bummed at my own. And if it's bad, now I'm distracted. So I don't like looking at other people's stuff. So I'm not looking for this. And I got to tell you, Jeff, I've even been dismayed to give people good messages. Not many people say that, but I'm straight up. I'm going to put my hand up. There's been times where I've been told to give somebody a good message, and I was like, well, cool message. Have somebody else. I'm going to mess it up or whatever. Or they're going to think that I think I'm something that I'm not.
I think about Jeremiah. Who was the prophet that he was kind of going up against? I forget the guy's name. But it talked about that the prophet that he was prophesying good. Mm-hmm. He was prophesying good over Israel, and Jeremiah was saying, "Hey, I'm wanting to say amen to this," but you know what? You're just prophesying out of your own will. You're wanting it to be good. And listen, there are so many people that will prophesy things that they want to see. Whether it's how many of these prophets do we have come on the air and say Donald Trump's going to be the next president again? He's going to beat Joe Biden. You know what? You were wrong, and that means that you were prophesying falsely. You were prophesying out of your own heart, your own soul, and instead of listening to God. And it may sound great. It may be great. And even Jeremiah in that instance was like, yeah, this sounds great, but hey, that's not what God's saying.
Right.
And so how hard is that? I've been in a place like that when God's given me a word of knowledge about people, a word of wisdom. I think back to a private time. I was in an office one time and the Spirit of God came on me. It wasn't at a big church service. We didn't have the fog machines or the strobe lights or anything like that. I get a kick out of seeing all that stuff. But I had a word of knowledge about a lady that was sitting next to me in this office. And I just began to talk to her and I'm saying, look, you tried to commit suicide last night. And we just started going through all, and her eyes got massively big and she's listening. I didn't want to say this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, what if I miss this? But I mean, I felt the Spirit of God come on me and I had to obey. And how hard is that to give that kind of a word? I can't even, I was telling someone about what they did last night, not that they're about to die. Right, man, that's pretty tough.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that was the thing I wanted to get across is like, you have a good message for somebody, whether or not you struggle with giving that, because I've actually struggled with giving a good message before, because I was like, well, then have somebody else do it who's got better credentials than me. Because, I'm thinking that like, go telephone the line, say, hey, Ian gave me a good word and it came out to be true. Go hit him up. I don't want any of that.
Yeah.
I don't feel like that's, and so even good words, I'm real hesitant about, but to have to turn around and say, I know I just told that guy he's getting his job back in 3 days.
Yeah.
But in 3 days, you're going to die. To deliver, to be faithful in the good and the bad as a messenger, saying, look, it would do me no good and it's going to do you no good to assume that you might get your job back. He could have easily said, oh yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
And be like, hey, he's going to be dead in 3 days. He ain't going to come back for me. Right.
Yeah.
And there's another thing, Jeff. Joseph was given the word in the Spirit and he had the ability to control certain factors. And if he had not moved in the Spirit, in truth, with faith, undoubtedly, he could have said, soon you will return back to your, he said 3 days, Jeff. And here's the thing, like if it's from the Spirit, it's best to be said. And then if it's not, it's not, right? But this is something that, this is not some vague, a tall, dark man is going to come into your future and you're going to prosper and it can be interpreted 3 days. You have a 3 day limit time to find out, is he real or is he fake? I mean, there's
going to be something with the color green. Yeah, something with the color green, and there's a popsicle stick involved. I'm not really sure what all that means. Do you understand? Just a bunch of garbage. Hey, I saw on Facebook just the other day, some lady, hey, it's the end of the year. If you want a prophecy, hit me up. I'm like, no. What are you talking about? Come on, the Holy Spirit's not there for parlor tricks and things like that. And prophecy, word of wisdom, word of knowledge, that's not something that we have control over. We turn on and off. I guys, listen, if you're buying into that stuff, don't buy into it. That's a bill of sale that you don't want to cash. Go ahead, brother.
So on the third day, right, which another foreshadowing there of Yeshua with Joseph, third day.
Yep.
Right. I mean, we're talking in the pit. And then the third day, a prophecy is proven to be true. His word is proven to be true.
Yep.
Right. And you've got your like sheep and goat, right? You also have that the blood and the flesh, the wine and the meat, right?
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, I mean, it's not a big thing, but it's Pharaoh's birthday. This is one of 2 times birthdays referenced. You've got the other one is Herod. Right. So take it for what you will, for whoever. I'm not trying to attack anybody or anything like that. I'm just saying this is the 2 times that I'm aware of. I don't think there's anything else ever referencing that except for when you got like Job saying, curse the day that I was born, but that's a whole different thing. Okay. So 3 days later, it's proven true. And they make the feast to the servants. Hey, what do you think the odds are that the baker was like, oh, Joseph was wrong because they invited him back to the palace and the feast is going, right?
He's like, man, I got it. I'm in. Woo!
Right. Well, he gets there and he just smirks to himself and he's like, man, that dingy old Hebrew slave.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Silly silly guy, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Hearing from his one God. I got a bunch of gods. And man, they took me out, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
They took me
So
out.
he shows up and he gets hung. And okay, so last verse of chapter 40, yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgot him. And I don't get the feeling that this is a malignant, but I mean, there's a
got
lot
busy.
going on. He's excited. He got his job back.
He got busy, man.
Oh, hey, by the way, King Pharaoh, now that you
Yeah.
give me my job back, let me tell you about this guy who was telling me about my dreams back in prison.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Dude,
you just got your job back. You don't want to
He
sound
just
goofy.
got his job back. He's not sticking his neck out, right? He just saw what happened to the baker, right? He's like, nope, I'm good. I'm shutting my mouth up. I'm walking the straight and narrow. I'm not saying any. I'm not even. I'm making sure when I clock in, it's right at the time. I'm not even clocking in 5 minutes early and clocking out 15 minutes late, so I can squeeze in another 30 minutes on the paycheck. None of that's going on. I totally agree.
Yeah, thanks for my job back. Thanks for not killing me. By the way, let's talk about a conspiracy theory that was presented to me by a guy in prison.
Yeah.
I'm and I think there's a reason for this, and I think extra biblical texts claim, and I'm not so necessarily convinced of this, but I think there's extra biblical texts that claim that the reason Joseph had to wait those 2 years is because he was putting trust into that situation, because he was so confident in his, and this is not a bad confident, this is a righteous confident. He was so confident in giving the interpretation of that dream to the butler that he says, and remember me when this happens. There's no if. He's seeing this as an opportunity, okay? And he believes in the providence and the provision of Yah and things like that, but he's not going to pass up, not that usurps or competes against or contradicts, but rather, just because I believe in the Father doesn't mean I should passively sit and just wait for everything to land in my lap. He sees it as an opportunity. Maybe this is how Yah is going to get me out of her. Hey, when you get your job back, go tell your boss that I helped you. Please remind him, And so, of course, he forgets. And it was Yah's timing, as Karen's bringing up here. So came to pass at the end of 2 full years. So we are given that it's not just the second year, because that's something I like to notice is when it says second year, we could be talking second week of the second year. Once you've completed, talking about birthdays and things like that, when you hit that age, you've completed that amount of years. You're not starting that year, you're now going past that. And we need to think about those things if we're going to try to talk about numbers, especially ages of people in the Bible and stuff like that. So it says the end of full 2 years. So he was in prison at the very least for what? At least 2 years. And I would argue scripturally more so, right? Because it said a season before that, right? I mean, unless you want to count that those 3 days, and technically we're talking 2 full years and 3 days, whatever. At the very least 2 years. Okay. I'm thinking it's longer than that. That's just me. Okay. So Pharaoh has his dream and he is disturbed. He believes that there's something to it. He does not believe that it's a normal dream. And it's okay. So you got 7 well-favored kine, fat flesh, and they're in the meadow feeding. And then you've got 7 other ones coming up out of the river. When it says the river, we're only talking one river in Egypt, right? It says the river, not a river. And they're ill-favored, lean flesh, and they stood by the kine. And it says that, they were so ill-favored and lean flesh that these are not like any that the Pharaoh has ever seen in all of Egypt. We're not talking just looking malnourished. We're not talking maybe the owners didn't keep up with it or they're eating bad grass. We're talking you're surprised they're even alive. You see rib cages and stuff like that. And you know how dreams can be, man, sometimes when it's so realistic and if you're disturbed by it, I mean, we're talking these deathly zombie looking cows coming up out of the river, which I think signifies the river represented the economy and the blessings of Egypt and things like this. They looked to the river for the provision for things. They were using the Nile for so many things, but also that was a representation of their right. And so everything they got, everything that was good, everything that boosted was of the river. So when it comes up out of the river, there's some significance there. And so you got these zombie cows coming out eating. Which is just horrid. If you're in a dream, right? You hear that and you're thinking cartoon, whatever, maybe, right? Like at Sunday school, this is your dream where it feels real. And you're watching a zombie cow eat another cow. I mean, that is disturbing. That is disturbing, right? And so he wakes up from it that he's so disturbed, and then he sleeps and dreams a second time. And so you got the ears of corn, which may be argued to be wheat. And I'm not going to fight anybody on that one. But either way, whether you think it's corn or wheat, right? I'm leaning more towards wheat for multiple reasons, but it really doesn't matter to me either way. So you've got the 7 ears, and they're blasted with the east wind, interestingly enough, which you and I have talked about in our in our Exodus study. For anybody who's not familiar, it's a very long, great, in-depth Exodus study of the first 14 chapters of Exodus. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out and watch at least 2 videos and tell me it wasn't worth it. And if I wasted your time, then I'm sorry. I'm not going to promise anything other than I'm sorry, but I think you'll enjoy it. So you've got the 7 thin ears, and then you've got the 7 good ears, and the 7 thin ears blast away the good ones, right? So you've got this twofold second witness yet again, emphatically double, established by God is what the scripture says, that it shows that it is by God and that it is to come quickly, and you have your second witness, right? And they are both the same dream, just emphasize that you're going to have 7 good years and 7 bad years. Okay, Jeff.
Yeah.
Joseph left at 17, left as if he wasn't kidnapped. Joseph was kidnapped at 17.
Yeah.
He is now 30. Mathematically, we're talking 13 years, but we don't know what part. So over 13. So this would be the 14th year. Jeff. Okay. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
And now the Pharaoh's like, hey, listen, I had a dream about 7 good years, like at Potiphar's house.
Yeah.
And then I've got, and then 7 bad years, like being in a dungeon.
Yeah.
And Joseph's like, oh, this is funny. I feel like I just lived this terrible dream of yours where it went from good to bad, and it was half and half, which reminds me of the eschatology. You got your end times, which again, you have usually people go with 7. I would say a little bit less than 7, but you have this understanding of up until the mark, a 3.5-year point and a 3.5-year point, split in half. And I don't know if you and I have talked about this before, but back in March of 2020, it was one of the few things that I came out, and I was real scared to say this, and I wasn't prophesying or anything like that, but I said that I had prayed on how to view March 2020. At the end of March, I was like, oh, this stuff's getting crazy. And I asked how to view it, how God would want me to view what's going on, and he gave me the 7 good years and 7 bad years. And I said, well, are these the good years or the bad years? Because if these are the good years, I am terrified. But it just makes me, wonder about things. And again, that this is being brought up, and it feels like it's a good word for a good season for right now. Half good, half bad, years of good, years of plenty, years of famine. I mean, food shortages, wheat famine, things like this. This is actually on the lips of people, which you and I and other people warned about more than 2 years ago. But it's actually being spoken by commoners now. I don't mean commoners as in below you commoners, but I'm just saying the average person is now using words like food shortage, famine, the wheat grains in Ukraine and things like this. So, I mean, is this a word for the season? I'm thinking more so than we might even want to accept. So that's just something I wanted to bring up so that I don't forget. Okay, but I also wanted to get that theory in there, Jeff. What do you think? What do you think the odds are? Because how much more would that remind Joseph and go, oh yeah, the word and the prophecy and stuff like that, and re-strengthen? He's been in prison for at least 2 years. How interesting would it be if it was like 6.5 years, or 7 years and 7 years, or almost 7 and almost 7?
Wow. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Because and you would see this mirroring, and you get this, you get 2 dreams. Joseph had 2 dreams. Pharaoh had 2 dreams. You have the butler and the baker, and they're very similar, 2 dreams. Right? You keep getting this first, second, and they're very similar. One's good, one's bad. One's good, one's bad. 7 years of plenty in Potiphar's house. 7 years of still being favored and blessed, but in prison. And if you're going to compare Potiphar's house to prison, I would say one's good and one's bad, right? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I just can't help but think that would encourage Joseph all the more when the Pharaoh's talking about this. He's like, man, this is definitely, I mean, not about me, but this is reminding me that God is in this, to stay strong in this. This is what he's got for you, but it's reminding me also. And I don't know about you, but I've had moments like that before where I've been given the interpretation of a dream or something like that. And the answer is meant for them, but what they're talking about and what I'm hearing also applies to me in a different way, and encourages me to give them that answer, even though if I gave them what I'm getting out of it, it would kind of ruin it for them, kind of thing. Because they'd be like, this isn't about you. And it's like, you're right, it's not about me, but God is using this to also remind me. Like when you're preaching and you're like, I preach to you, but me also. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. You know what I'm talking about. So
man, that's spot on.
I think that might have been going on here with Joseph. I think it might have been 6.5, 7 years in each. So
I could definitely see that. I've not thought about that before. I think you
I got you on something.
You got me on something. Yeah.
I mean, but it's just a theory. It's just speculation. So
I like it.
I'd rather get you on something that can be a little bit more solid in. This is just a
I think
theory.
I think it was more like 3 weeks in Potiphar's house and then another 4 weeks in prison. I'm just kidding.
And then 13 years of just lingering in space.
Yeah,
Dude,
he was hanging out at the mall. There we go.
I've seen videos and they're like, well, he was there for about a month or two. Nobody really knows. And I'm like, then why'd you say a month or two? And why
Well, yeah.
what are you talking about? And
Yeah.
they're like, well, then, she'd been watching him for a few weeks. I'm like, a few weeks? What if it was a few years? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But yeah, all the past couple of days, especially, I kept looking at it and I kept thinking, I just kept getting that feeling like, I bet you it was half and half. Because look at the rest of what's going on with Joseph's life, and look at what it's referencing. And interestingly enough, right, Joseph quickly comes onto the scene, pops onto the scene at 30.
Yeah,
like somebody else that popped on the scene out of nowhere at 30.
At 30, yeah.
At 30,
yeah.
So
there's so many similarities to Yeshua. Yeah. So do you think that the priesthood was being passed down to Joseph right here?
The priesthood. I mean, you could probably argue that to some degree. You could probably argue that to some degree. When you talk about like the inheritance that should have gone to Reuben for the priesthood, and then end up, you could argue that. You could argue Levi. You could argue Joseph. You could argue both. You could argue one or the other for sure.
Well, because God's original plan. I don't know if you know, I have a series on the priestly garments,
right?
And that was the idea. Was that God was trying to get us to a kingdom of priests. That was his original plan anyway.
For the entire nation. It wasn't supposed to be just one tribe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there we go, brother.
Which preaches really nice. But then, they'd say, don't give us the words of life. We're afraid you're going to kill us with your words of life, oh God. Let there be a mediator between you and us.
Yeah.
Because we're afraid you're going to kill us with your words of life.
Yep. Let's go to plan B now. There we go.
Okay, so you got the Pharaoh's dreams and things like that. Yep. I am not. I'm sorry if I'm moving stuff around in my mouth. I've been having teeth pain for the past few weeks. So this little lump, if you see me moving stuff around, that's not chewing tobacco. That's actually clove.
Gotcha.
And I put it in there, and it helps with my jaw pain and stuff like that. So
it's amazing for any kind of tooth pain.
It's been working great.
Miranda told me about that. I'm like, oh my gosh, here you go with your apothecary stuff. And
hey, encourage it.
Works.
Man.
It works, brother. Amen.
Encourage it. And if you don't encourage your wife, me and my wife will encourage your wife. Because my wife, she learns all those things, but I mean, there's only so much. I mean, my wife's got my 2 children, and we've got all these other things going on.
Yeah.
And so she's able to receive what she can and store what she can. But anybody in the body that feels led to study up on this and is able to download it, for some of us it's scripture, and some of us it's not scripture, but herbal remedies seems to really ingrain more. Dude, encourage that, because that kind of knowledge is strongly needed in the body right now and going down the road. Oil of oregano, agreed.
Yeah.
A lot of people use that for pulling, which there's arguments about the whole pulling thing.
Definitely cut it. Don't use oil of oregano straight. That'll mess you up. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not of the opinion that Joseph was like, hey, you're going to have 7 good years, 7 bad years. My wisdom and understanding says that you need someone to be in charge of taking care of Egypt so that it doesn't go wrong. I don't think that's how it went. I think Joseph truly was being a steward of the gift and was telling him, like, you're going to need somebody who understands how to move all these things. And there's a lot of logistics to consider in place. I mean, you have the weighing out, the balancing, the knowing the amount, knowing how to store it, where to store it, how much to take so that you have enough. I mean, you're talking serious mathematic, economical, governing, so many different facets to this situation. You need a committee board for the committee board. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I don't think Joseph had himself in mind. Personally, I'm not of the opinion that Joseph was actually pointing at himself when he said, you need somebody with wisdom and understanding to be in charge of this. And it just so happens that favor of Yah on Joseph, the Pharaoh is sitting there going, well, I just went through all my magicians and Chaldeans, right? Sounds familiar, right? When you're looking at other pharaohs and other kings and Chaldeans and Babylonians. And you and I, we talk about this with Daniel. We talked about this with Exodus. We're talking about this now with Joseph, But they say, hey, the magicians are no good. My astrologists are no good. The WHO and the WEF. I mean, the magicians are no good, and they're giving us false information and false advice. you know, and you've come to me with wisdom and understanding that's better than the WHO and the WEF. I'm sorry, I didn't mean for that to slip out at all. You know, well, I'm just saying, you know, nowadays when we read these scriptures, we see magicians, astrologists, and Chaldeans, and you either, as an American, block it out of your head and say, well, that was then, they had magicians, and we don't have that now, or you think like, oh, astrologists, well, it's the guy in the newspaper that's talking about the zodiac signs, and I'm sitting there going, you have Dr. Ouchie and crap like that. Those are the magicians and the astrologists. Those are the quote unquote wise men of our world that are being listened to. That shouldn't be.
Sorcerers.
Those are the sorcerers.
Yeah, right. Sorcerers. It's going to pharmakia. It's going to, you know, to all of that, man. Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. We still have that same stuff today. It's more heavily influenced than I think even back then because of TV, internet, and all of the brainwashing going on. Wow, that's a good point.
Okay. So he says, you know, and Pharaoh's saying even to his servants, can we find such as man in whom the Spirit of God is? And so this is the first time in Scripture that we see such a claim.
Yeah.
In whom the Spirit of God dwells, right? And that's Joseph. First time we see that in Scripture. We see that in a few other places. A lot of people believe that's only for the last 20% of the Bible, but we see it talked about with David and Daniel and Joseph and a few others as well. So I think that's worth noting, but I'm not going to sit here and fight with the chat tonight. If anybody wants to fight about that, we'll have to do it at a different time. But I can't promise you I'm going to fight. I might tell you what I think and just leave it be. I'm not much for debates these days. I'm not saying I'll always shy away from it. I'm just saying 2014, I put gloves on. Now I'm just kind of like, I'm going to teach what I feel led to do. If you want to disagree and put up a teaching and give me the link, maybe one day I'll feel like watching it. That's as much as I can promise you. You know what I mean? Like that's as much as I got for you. Okay. So Joseph says, and Pharaoh says to Joseph, you know, God showed you these things and there's none so discreet and as wise as you. You shall be over my house. Why does this sound familiar? And you shall be over everything, and only in the throne will I be greater than you. People talk about how can the Father and the Son both be God, but one is greater than the other. And you've got the argument of the throne. I'm just saying, I see some things here that make me think of some other things that people get very touchy and sensitive about, and you're either on one side of the fence or the other, and that's fine. I love people on both sides of the fence, so I'm not trying to start anything. I'm just saying I find this interesting. Okay, I'm just throwing that out there. I think that Joseph here is a picture of Yeshua, even in this verse. Only in the throne will be greater than you. I'm just saying I think that's interesting. Okay, I'm just gonna put that out there and leave that be. So he said, I set you over all the land of Egypt. Now this is what makes me think of where we get to place ourselves like Joseph when God created Adam, mankind. He said, I've put you on this earth and in charge of the earth. I've given you dominion and authority. I gave you my signet ring, which authority you are now. And later on, we see in scriptures, we see the ambassadors of Christ. You can move in my authority in the name of Yeshua. You can cast out demons and heal and things like that. The signet ring, right? So these are things that we can relate to. Right? Only in the throne am I greater than you, but you have dominion and you have authority over all the land of Egypt. And of course, for Egypt would be for us, the entire world, right? And Matrix world, right? Okay.
Interesting point here. It says, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen. Back, and I won't scroll all the way back, but back before when Pharaoh was calling him in, Joseph, it says that Joseph shaved and changed his garments. And listen, so we're seeing even further promotion here. Not only did he have on clean clothes and all this, he's clean shaven and all this, he's being promoted even further. I tell you, there is so much to garments in the.
Oh, I know it. I know you and I've talked about this before. I think we might have even brought up this exact example because just walking out of that prison and wearing a physical different outfit. It is a mirroring, a representation of the spiritual change of going from a low end to moving up. I got to hit the latrine real quick. So this is my break moment. If you want to have something to contribute, you can, or you can take off and grab tea or coffee and everybody can sit and look at my empty chair for a minute, I guess. Up to you, Jeff, but I'll be right back.
All right, man. That sounds good. Let's, let's see. We'll pop Ian out. There we go. Hey guys, listen, if you're enjoying this, hit the like button. This has been an amazing teaching tonight. There's some very good nuggets coming out tonight. I'm so glad that Ian asked me to come on to do this. I'm really enjoying being on with him again. And listen, this is such a good message for us. Don't give up. If God has spoken to your heart about doing something, hang in there. It doesn't matter what's going on. It doesn't matter what's happening in your life. God is going to be faithful to that word that he's given you. And he has given us each things to do in our life. And it's up to us to kind of stand up and do that. One of the things that I was studying over the last week was was Solomon's temple. And one of the things that really impressed me was it had 12 bulls all the way around the laven. And to me, what that is symbolizing is the word of God going out through all of Israel. All of Israel was supposed to bless the nations. They had a job to do. So guys, listen, we're part of that ministry in that laven. We're part of those bulls. We're not a graven image or anything like that. But this was something that Yah gave to Solomon to put in that. And it's that message that Yeshua is sending us each out. Yeshua has given each of us a part or a puzzle piece to go out and do. And so we have that job. And don't worry about anything that goes on that messes you up. You may think it's derailing you, just like what's going on with Joseph. You may think things are derailing you, but it's not. It is God's will. It's his timing. You hang in there. And the Bible says that you'll win if you faint not. It says he that endures to the end. You know, we have to. What if Joseph had given up? What if Joseph had said, like, geez, I was in the pit. I got, I've got this hot, Jessica Rabbit thing here. No one's going to know. What if he was in prison and said, you know what? To heck with these interpretations that God's given me on these dreams. I'm stuck here in prison. I'm just going to shut up and go make my license plates. I mean, it could have been all that type of thing. Listen, weeping endures for the night, but joy comes in the morning. Know that you need to keep doing what God puts on your heart and don't lose faith. I pray tonight for you. I pray that your faith doesn't fail. Keep on keeping on. I'm going to bring Ian back. Here we go. Hey, Ian. There we go, brother. Are you there?
Sorry, yeah, I was muted.
There you go, brother. All right. Yeah.
I was eating a menorah cookie while I was listening to you.
Amen, brother. Oh man, I tell you, this is such a good message tonight. It hits on so many levels. I mean, there's
there's so much. There's so much. We're leaving out a lot too.
I keep going back to how that he had so much against him, and he had so many opportunities to throw in the towel, and he didn't. I think of Paul and Silas.
We don't even see signs of wavering faith. I'm not saying that he didn't, but I'm just saying Scripture usually gives us indications of that, and we don't see that.
Yeah, like Paul and Silas, they were arrested about 3:00 in the afternoon, right? And it says at about midnight, the other prisoners heard them singing and praises to God and praying and all this stuff. Well, what did they do from 3:00 to 12:00? Probably what you and I would have been doing, like, okay, God, I'm doing your stuff here, and I got thrown in jail. I got flogged today because I'm out doing your work, and now I'm sitting in this stinking dungeon. We don't really see that listed anywhere here with Joseph. Not that it didn't happen. There may have been times, but guys, listen, that's a big deal. Hang on. Oh, I just love the stick-to-itiveness that Joseph has here, and what a picture of Yeshua.
Is that the technical terminology, stick-to-itness?
That's a theological term that I just made up. Stick-to-itiveness.
Nice.
And think about that. Yeshua leaves heaven. He comes to earth and is born. He gives up some of his Godhead to come and dwell in the mortal flesh. And his own creation rejects him. They try to run him off a cliff one time. They try to get ready to stone him. They're always trying to trip him up and to make him out to be something that he's not. They're lying. They're bearing false witness. They're you name it, they're doing it to him. And he, at the end of it, He says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They knew what they were doing. But man,
well,
I think
they knew as best as they could some of them.
yeah.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And even at that, it's that whole, if they understood the full picture.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, robe was torn, disrobed, beaten, rejected and hated by his own brethren.
Yeah.
Tossed down into a pit.
Yeah.
Sold for silver.
So many things, man.
You know, brought prophetic truth to light and
rejected by his own kin.
Yeah, favored by his father. We can go on. We can go on and on. Hated because of the favoritism.
Yeah.
I mean, the list is, like I said, I didn't even, I was going to list them out, and then I started realizing it's way more than the whole video is going to have to be just a list.
Yeah.
Because there's so much. Okay, so then he gives him a second chariot. He gives him the signet ring, right? Which means, it's like a wax seal ring that, thus saith Pharaoh when Joseph would use that ring. So, I mean, everything but the throne literally was given to Joseph. This is not just a figure of speech here. So then he's given a name change. It's not on a stone, and it's not in the book of Revelation, but he's given a change of name, much like Yaakov to Yisrael, right?
Yeah.
He's given a name change with this ultimate
Do you got anything
promotion.
on that? Do you got anything on the name change?
The Zaf HaPanea.
Yeah.
I like the meaning of the name, because that's real interesting, because there's arguments on that. I have some notes on it if you want to talk about it.
Yeah. I know that most people translate it down as I'm looking at my notes here on my phone. The Geneva Bible says the expounder of secrets. Mm-hmm. We have got all, the Coptic version talks about a revealer of secrets.
Right.
But if you actually look at the Egyptian, we found this this word in the hieroglyphs. It means God speaks and he lives.
Right.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty neat.
God speaks and he lives. That's the rarest suggestion by scholars, but seems to be the most accurate.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the Targums like Onkelos and the Pseudo-Jonathan and Josephus.
Yep.
That were the ones that pushed the man to whom hidden things are revealed / reveals mysteries, which I read that and I'm sitting there going, if that's the case, then why the Masons, who are all about the hidden and secrets being revealed and Egyptian theology and this is Mason's bread and water right here. You're talking Egyptian revealing mysteries, secrets, and they talk about Tubal-Cain. They don't talk about Joseph. You hear me? I was just like, okay,
right, yeah.
Okay. So, anyways, but yeah, the Zaf HaPanea. Yeah, that's what I got too. Is God speaks and he lives. Okay, we already talked about.
I thought I'd get you on that.
No, that's okay. You got me on the Bible code. Does that count?
Hey, yeah, that works. That works.
But I didn't get you on the poison though, did I?
No.
No, that's okay. You know what? I still haven't. See, the poison one wasn't mine. That was somebody else's. The 7 years and 7 years, that was mine.
7 years and the 7 years you got me on. I had not thought of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not taking credit. I'm just saying, like, I hadn't heard that from somebody else. That's something that came to me as I was doing it. Whether that's me or God or what have you, I don't know. I'm not going to claim that it's Yah said this, because it wasn't like that. It was just kind of one of those, I get this feeling, so I could be wrong. So, anyways, okay. So moving forward here, it says Joseph was 30. So here we are at that 30, right? Remember he was kidnapped. It said he was 17. So here we have at least 13 years. Right, with the understanding.
I just see, man. I see Yeshua, and I see Pharaoh as a type of God the Father here. Can we say that?
I already did, but yeah, you can say that.
Oh yeah, well there you go. But I just see this, man. He's 30 years old. He stands before Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh. And he went out through all the land. He went out through all the world. I just think that's beautiful, man.
Yeah, man. And then you start looking at, like, especially like Chad Schaefer stuff about how the whole world is under the bondage spiritually of Egypt. Yeah, all the land of Egypt. Interesting. Yeah. And, some might say Babylon now, what have you. They're kind of interchangeable when you're talking about metaphors and eschatology and things of that nature. Okay, so you got the 7 plenteous years brought forth by the handfuls, right? And so they're in Egypt, and Egypt's doing good. And Joseph's already done the math and everything like that, and it was so much that it was without number, which means they were trying to count it, and then somewhere along the line in those 7 years, they're like, it's not, we have more than we need. We don't even need to worry about balancing out the weights and counting them. Just keep. And so you have this understanding of 20%. So, 20% compared to the taxes now is like nothing. Some people pay more than 20% in just their social alone.
Yeah.
But back then, it's also believed by most scholars that the average taxes in Egypt at the time was 10%. So this is doubled for them, even though it's less for us now. But you also have that interesting, that 20%. You've got hanging back to the 10 to 15 and the 20% that are often referred to with tithing and extra tithing and given over double measures of tithing and stuff like that. Often the numbers that are thrown around is 10, 15 for good measure, and 20 if you're generous and you've been blessed. So I find that interesting as well.
I do think this is one area, like you said, you mentioned this, alluded this earlier. I think this is one place where King Jimmy gets this wrong. I think it's talking about wheat here, and I think we can get that out of the text. But I am reminded of when I used to read this, and we know the story that they're saved through this grain. I think it's wheat. I used to think about how in the world are they going to live off of bread, because bread's not very nutritious. Back in the day, it was. I'm so grateful for people like Sue Becker, the bread Beckers, teaching us about wheat and grinding your own wheat. And guys, listen, there is so much to that. I highly recommend checking out her channel, her store. Look at trying to grind your own wheat berries. You're able to live off this stuff. God designed this stuff for a purpose, and we, in our ultimate wisdom, rip everything out, all the nutrients out of it, and make that royal bread like Nebuchadnezzar was making, that had nothing. There's hardly any nutrition in it at all. Anyway, just a shout out for that. But I used to always wonder how in the world they're going to live off of wheat.
Okay, good stuff. No, it's good. I'm glad you brought that up, because they're like, man, how much do they like their bread?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's funny. Okay, so Joseph's there in Egypt, and during that time he has 2 sons with the daughter of the priest of On, which is the area. That's not an Egyptian deity. It's a region, On. And so he's given the daughter of the priest, which, there's all kinds of speculation on that. Did he bring her into the faith, or was she a distraction for him, and things like that? And it's all speculation. And, looking at Joseph's walk and not seeing any indication of him straying from the faith thereafter, I can't help but think that he wasn't brought into hers in any way.
Well, look at what we see in Patterns of Exodus with his home that was built. It was very symbolic of the 12 tribes of Israel. There were no pagan statues anywhere. There was a statue of Joseph that was made after his death, that was inside of his tomb. But there's no, that is such a good documentary.
I know.
I may watch it tonight.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Okay, so you have Manasseh, right, and Ephraim. You've got the God has allowed me to forget my toil, my father's house, and then you've got Ephraim, the double, right? Yeah. Which is funny, because Joseph, right? You look at his name, meaning you've got the adding to, right? Right. And he comes in, and what's he do spiritually? He's adding to. He takes whatever you got, and he multiplies it. There's profit to be made with Joseph, and the one who adds to, so it's kind of cool. Okay, so the 7 years of good are over, and the beginning of the 7 bad starts, right? Yep. So the land of Egypt is famished, and then they cry to Pharaoh for bread. Whatever. And I'm just saying, there's reasons why, like I said, that I agree with the wheat. It's not something that I find worth arguing over. It's just one of those like, you can have corn kernels of wheat. You know what I mean?
They could have been from the south and making cornbread. There we go.
Hey, and why not? Okay, so Pharaoh says to the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph," and what he says, do. You do. He's the one who's in charge of all this. He's got the same mindset as Potiphar. not Potiphar, the priest, Potiphar, right? But same mindset as the Potiphar, same mindset as the prison keeper. You know, they've all seen and trusted. And again, when the Pharaoh has this trust for Joseph, when he says, yeah, go to him and just do whatever he says, this is after 7 years of it working out.
Yeah.
This is not after 1 month of like, we think it's going to work out. I'm just saying, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm just saying. That's all I'm saying, Jeff. That's all I'm saying is I'm just saying. Okay. I think we're looking at a 7, 7, and 7 and going into another set of 7 here. That's all I'm saying.
That sounds very complete, brother.
It does.
Yeah.
It does sound like a complete number for many reasons.
Yeah. I think it's brilliant coming up here in a second where he is he's selling the corn back. They tithed all this corn in. They brought it all in under a king's command, and then he begins to sell it back to them, thus increasing not only the wealth of Egypt, but making Pharaoh probably one of the richest pharaohs that we have up until that time. And we do have recorded history. Again, I really point back to that documentary talking about Joseph and talking about this specific Pharaoh. They enjoyed a golden age after these 7 years of famine hit. They enjoyed a golden age with this Pharaoh because of all the wealth that that Joseph helped Pharaoh gain. And that's why there was such good favor on Joseph.
Okay, so you got the famine, right?
Yep.
Okay, so that leads to chapter 42. Unless there's anything you wanted to say up to 42 that we haven't gone into yet.
Nope.
Okay, awesome. Moving forward, Joseph's brothers go to Egypt, right? This is somewhere close to where I was ending out. I think I finally got them to Egypt, but I kind of rushed from here forward in the last 2 videos.
Yeah.
I just started speeding up and breathing through it. Okay, so Jacob sees that there's corn, wheat, whatever. He sees there's food, provision in Egypt and Mizraim. And Yaakov says to his sons, why do you look upon one another, right? And so I've always seen that as like, why are you looking to each other for provision? Why are you trying to figure out what each other has for fields and trying to make deals here when you see that it's in Egypt? But it's kind of funny. The first time I've ever heard this, David Guzik says that Yaakov had brought up Egypt. This is how he visualizes it, that Yaakov brought up Egypt. And right away in their minds, the last time they thought of Egypt was when they sold Joseph to Ishmaelites and Midianites going to Egypt. So their first thought is like, oh, and they all looked at each other. Okay. And now whether or not he's right about that, I don't know. But something that he kept emphasizing in his series that I totally agreed with him before the series, but he really put that nail in the coffin, is that his brothers were so filled with shame and guilt of what they had done that he kept saying, 20 to 25 years, which I would say it's a little bit less than that, considering what the scripture tells us for numbers here. Well, I mean, at this point, it's like what, 22 we're looking 14, at? Well, 14, and then you got the 7 is 21, and we're going into the 22nd year. Okay.
And that's a long time. That's a long time, Ian. That is a long, long time.
Well, that's the thing. And he was preaching it good, man. He was. For anybody who's not familiar with David Guzik, he's a dispensationalist. So, I was listening to one of his live Q&As the other day, and he's talking about how Shabbat's done away with and all this other stuff. And I said, okay. But I love his preaching on things that are not related to that, his studies on certain things. He's just awesome. But anyways, he started preaching. He starts talking to the congregation. He said, maybe some of you have had something that you've done 20 years ago that still bothers you here now today from 20 years ago. And he starts pointing out all throughout the scriptures, you see with these brothers, something good happens. Oh, it's punishment for what we did 20 years ago. Something bad happens. Oh, it's punishment because of something from 20 years ago. And there is some connection there, but not in the way that their guilt and shame is connecting it. You see what I'm saying? They're so eaten up by it. And it's to the point where you start to realize that Joseph sold into slavery his entire time. Yeah. After he was sold, he was freer than his brothers. Yeah. The entire time. Yeah.
Even though he was in slavery, even though he's sitting at the bottom of a federal pen, he's still more free than his brothers because, man, they were sin and fear have torment. And you think about the things that we go through You listen. I've never sold a brother into slavery. I've never tried to kill my brother. No matter how bad our fights were growing up, things like that, right? Can you imagine the guilt that's going on with these guys all these years? That's rough.
Yeah,
That's rough.
It's not good. It's not good.
Yeah.
And they're believing lies here. They're deceived a little bit that they can't be forgiven. They can't move forward. There's some things here. You know what I mean? Especially when you start looking into self-application.
Yeah.
Well,
they're maturing. They're maturing through the years. They're like, man, I was in my 20s, and boy, did I mess up. I did this, and this has haunted me ever since. This has just stayed with me and stayed with me and stayed with me.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. Okay. So whether or not that whole Egypt thing made them look at each other like, oh, getting triggered and remembered already, they're sent down to go to Egypt to get provision, right?
There we go.
But Benjamin, old Benny here, stays behind, right? Because Yaakov said, no, I already lost my first from my favorite wife. I'm not giving up the other one, right? My baby. That's my baby. And throughout this whole text, we see, even in the Hebrew, there's references to him being the younger one and stuff like that. But I mean, we're really looking at the youngest is a teenager, and it's not even like early teens. And at the oldest, by the time he makes it down to Egypt, Jeff, he has like 10 kids.
Yeah.
When he goes down to Egypt. So, I mean, and they're calling him young lad and things like that. And I'm like, well, I mean, he's probably my age, so you can call me young lad. I'm not going to fight you on it. I'm younger than most of my friends. But at the end of the day, this is not a 10-year-old. When he's got 10 children, my goodness, Jeff, he had 10 children that went with him. They list out the names. If you look for it, people pass that by all the time. And I'm like, oh, hold on. Benjamin had how many? And maybe some were twins. We don't know because it doesn't tell us. And it runs in the family. His dad was a twin, right? But even then, we're not talking 10-year-old, right? We're not talking 18 years old, So anyways. Okay, so they go down there, right? But old Benny stays behind. Okay, so now who's recognizing who from afar off?
There we go.
Right? Joseph's the governor of the land, and it's told to all the people of the land, and Joseph's brethren come and bow down before him with their faces to the earth. That sounds familiar, right?
That's already, man. That's coming to pass. They didn't even know it.
But it was 10, not 11.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah,
so he makes himself strange to them. It says speaks roughly to him, right? He's being curt and short and things like that. And later on, you can see in other verses, he's even using an interpreter. He's an Egyptian. He's an Egyptian ruler, second in charge, vice president, however you want to call him.
He's not speaking Hebrew here.
Right. So, and it's one of those, like, his face is shaved. He was 17, but at 17, I had some serious facial hair. When I went into the Army, Jeff, I was 17 when I went into the Army, and I had to shave 4 times a day in basic training because first it was 1 time a day, and then they were yelling at me for having a 5 o'clock shadow by noon. So, and by the end of basic training, they yelled at me because they said it was only me and one other guy who was 42. He was the youngest or the oldest you could be in basic training at that time in 2006 and the early 2000s there. And they said, you two have facial hair growing at the same time. What is up with this, And they're yelling at me. What makes you think you can act like a 40-year-old kind of thing? But anyways, my point is this. I don't know if he had a big bushy beard or whatever, Joseph, but he could have had facial hair. And now he's shaven. He's speaking Egyptian. He's got this Egyptian diadem maybe or a headpiece or something like that. I don't know.
Probably got him some mascara going on,
It's possible. I don't know, man. I don't know. I just know that while in Rome kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and it's one of those, even if you were able to recognize the face, they're not thinking they're going to run into Joseph, at least not as the leader, if they were ever to run into him. Absolutely. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so you're not thinking that, and Jeff, there's been times where I didn't recognize a person from a church in a grocery store. And that was only a matter of like a year or two. Forget 22 years, So they don't recognize him. Okay. So he's, he said, where do you come from? They said Canaan, right? And he knew them, but they didn't recognize him. And so it says Joseph remembered the dreams. And then he says, you are spies. Okay, so
Jeff, I love this. Go ahead.
Okay, so he remembers the dreams. Okay, is he twisting their arm and is he messing with them? Or Jeff, do you think he's recognizing that it's prophecy. The Spirit is moving through him, whether he realizes it or not. And there's now this intricate plan that is needed for reconciliation and restoration. I mean, Joseph's at a fork in the road here, but it's like an actual fork that we use in our culture where it's got many prongs because he's had many decisions here.
Yeah.
He could have said, I know who you are, right? Get out of here. As unto me, as unto you, right? If God's going to bless you, you can do it through somebody else. He could pretend like he doesn't know who they are, just give them the food and act indifferent and send them off and cut them off from his life. I want nothing to do with them. They don't need to know it's me.
Yeah.
Right? We all get these decisions in our lives with people that we love or don't love and stuff like that. We can do it as they did to us. We can act indifferently and just push them away. We can do all these different things.
I can love them, but I'm gonna love them from afar. Let them go on.
Right, sure. Yeah. And he had the opportunity here to save us 6 chapters of scripture and just say, hey guys, it's me, right? He could have shortened the book of Genesis down to 44 or whatever we're on right now instead of 50. No, he decides to claim that they are spies when he knows they're not spies. Yeah. So what do you think it is, Jeff? Do you think he's tormenting him, or do you think he recognizes the need for there to be 11, not 10, wheat and sheaf, and that there needs to be the stars and the moon and things like that?
You're one of the few people that I've seen catch this. I think that he's hearing from Yah, that he is wanting to see every word fulfilled. And I think that what's going on here, just like we talked about a while ago, what does that name mean in Egyptian? God speaks and he lives.
Okay, Jeff, so check this out.
Yeah.
Earlier in the beginning of this video, a little over 2 hours ago, well, actually less than that, because we spent like 20 minutes of me talking about, I haven't been on him forever.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the beginning of this study, Joseph was seen from afar, and he was seen as the tattler, as the one who comes to spy on the brethren.
Yep.
And to give an evil report, right? To see so in scripture, Jeff.
Yeah.
When it talks about lift up the skirts and I will see their nakedness, says Yahovah, is it talking about actual physical nakedness, or are we talking about spiritual nakedness?
Spiritual, yeah. Definitely.
Okay, so Joseph comes to spy in their eyes as a spy of the land. What on the 10 brothers? Okay, so now the tables have turned, the roles have reversed. Joseph sees them from afar, and he accuses them of being spies to see the nakedness of the land of Mitzrayim. Yeah. So right off the bat, we're doing 1 for 1 now. But it's not a tit for tat in a way that it could have been. And I don't.
I look at it more like an Isaiah 46:10, God calling the end from the beginning.
Yeah,
that's where I see this. That's where I see this.
Yeah, I totally don't think that Joseph had this plan in his mind at all, or that he's thinking these things. I think the Spirit was moving, and he was just kind of like, it was just happening. And
whether or not he knew it or not, I think, and I don't know. I think back then he didn't know some things. I think now he's more familiar. I think he's gotten to a place over the years of maturing and hearing God. You know, that's something that we talk about a lot is, listen, you need to be getting alone with God. You need to be getting with him on a daily basis. It talks about being filled with the Holy Spirit, not one time, it being immersed into God every day. There was these different offerings that we did that we're supposed to do every day. We're supposed to have that intimacy every day. Why? Because there's coming a time when you're going to need to hear the voice of the Father and know that that's the Father speaking. Here, I think Joseph, through maturity, through years of experience, listening to God, that relationship, he knows when the Holy Spirit is speaking to him. Listen, God's the same yesterday, today, and forever. The Spirit of God speaking to us is not a New Testament thing. God was speaking to Joseph back then, and I think he had gotten to a place where he's hearing it, and he's doing just like Yeshua is doing. I don't say things unless I hear my Father say it. I think that's what we see a picture of right here.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're sure they said we're not spies, we're servants, we're 12 brethren. And they go, oh yeah, so we have one man, one father in the land of Canaan, and behold, the youngest is with him, and the other one is not. Right? They're not gonna say what that means.
Hey, we killed this one guy, and our baby brother's home. There we go. Right.
Well, they don't know if he's dead or not, so they can't even say he's dead. They're saying he is not, because they don't know what to make of it.
They don't know what
It
happened.
could be dead. Let's not talk about the fact that we sold him in as a human traffic slave. We're not going to get into all that. You know,
that's the minutia. We'll just skip right past that.
Right. That's something that they'll talk about in the news in the 2000s, and people will still pretend like Epstein's Island and the Clintons and things like that doesn't exist and has nothing to do with human trafficking. We'll leave that for them. That's not for us right now in Mizraim. Okay, so and so so yeah, I sometimes it's hard for me to hold it back, man.
Slide that right in there. There you go.
Just put that in there and move forward. Okay, so by the life of Pharaoh, you're not going to go forward unless the youngest brother. Okay, you're telling me this story that you're not spies and stuff like that. Then we're going to test if there's any truth to your story. Whereas Joseph wants to see his whole family, but also there needs to be 11 Baals. There needs to be 11 stars, and there is 10.
Yeah,
you know, and whether or not Joseph realizes this, there needs to be reconciliation and restoration. And if you just say, "Oh, guys, it's me, I forgive you," whatever, you're not getting the chance to work this out. I mean, we are talking over 20 years of a secret and a shame that it is a big deal that needs to be physically worked out. This is a process, and is going to take. And we see this with Scripture that even when Joseph is long over it, and the brothers even lie at the end of Genesis, saying that Jacob claimed that they should beg for and make sure that Joseph forgives. He's already done everything he can to show them and tell them that he forgives them. Jacob dies, and they go, "Oh, hey, by the way, Dad said because of what we did, you have to forgive us." And you know, and it's just like, dude, that didn't happen. Number one, number two. You know, like that wasn't really, but that shows how bad it was on their heart. Even after all this, he brings them to Mitzrayim. He takes care of them. He sets them up as shepherds so that they can continue doing their own thing, and they won't have increased taxes, and they won't have to fight against their peers for wages. They don't have to worry about
the population explodes. Yeah,
and they're given Goshen, which you can see when you study that stuff out. I know you know about that. Goshen was like perfect land to pick for all kinds of reasons.
The best. It was a choice land.
And they were allowed to be their own separate community. I mean, they were a gated community. You know what I mean? So, I mean, he set them up, and they still had to play that little game with him because that's how bad it was. It had been eating them up for more than 2 decades, Jeff. Okay, so he said, you got to bring back your youngest son or your youngest brother just to prove your story's true. And if you do that, you know, okay. So he said,
and how can we just say, how odd is it? You think about this. You're one of these. Maybe you're Simon or Reuben or whoever, right? You're coming down. You're going down to get this food, and all of a sudden you're brought up before the second command. And not only is you're brought up before the second command, he's challenging your reason for being there. He's saying you're a spy, and now this is.
It's
bizarre. What would your thoughts be, Ian? You know, you're trying to come down. You got to do this stuff. You got to get back. You know. I've got flocks to tend to. I've got, wow.
Well, you see,
we're fixing to be thrown into jail because,
Right. Not only are they freaking out and there's desperation here, but there's desperation here, Jeff. You understand what I'm saying? There's not just desperation in the situation of like, oh, he could kill us and put us in prison and stuff like that, but it's desperation of if we just run away right now, we're going to starve to death.
The whole family. Gone.
They're coming and they're bowing down before this Egyptian guy. They're getting falsely accused of things. And when you go down a couple of verses here in 42 and a couple other sections, you see that they're saying this is because of what we did to Joseph. This is all God punishing us because of Joseph. So it's one of those situations, and I don't know about you. You could probably relate with me on this though. But I've had moments where, you know, all growing up, actually, I had a lot of times where I got away with things I shouldn't have, and then I'd get in trouble for things I didn't do. And I used to always get annoyed the moment you get in trouble for something you didn't do. But then I'd always think right away, yeah, but I did do other stuff I didn't get busted for. Like it's only fair. It's weird, but it's only fair that if I'm not going to get busted for what I didn't or I did do, then I might as well get busted for what I didn't do. And it was like that when I was in the military too. I'd get away with stuff that I did do, but then I'd get accused of stuff I didn't do, and it was all kinds of weird stuff. Okay, so you see that's a reaction though, Jeff. We actually get to see that. We see that they say, is this not because of what we did? Okay, so they're put in the jail for 3 days.
Yep.
We've got another 3-dayer.
3 days. Yep.
Another 3-day, Jeff. All throughout this whole thing, it's to the point where you would think if you didn't know the Father, if you don't know the Father, it's easy to look at this and say it's poetic, it's metaphorical, it's linguistic, it's amazing, but it's not factual, it's fantasy. And this is why you get all kinds of different whether it's Orthodox Christian or Jew or what have you, or in between or mixed or whatever,
Yeah.
they say, well, we can't take all of this literally. Some of this is just to get the story across. And then before you know it, Moses wasn't real, and neither was the Red Sea or anything like that. And it wasn't divided. It's just too cool. All the third days in here and all the sevens and all these other things. Okay. So they said, let one of your brethren be bound in the house of your prison, and then the rest of you can go back.
I just want to throw out, this was a hint right here. This is another hint. You talked about these things. This is another hint that they missed for I fear God. I just think that's amazing.
Okay, well, they did miss it, but here's the thing: is like you can have a fear of somebody else's deity, especially in like the pagan world.
Yeah.
Without having respect or worshiping, you still have a respect, and we see this in Scripture too. We see nations outside of Israel. You see the Philistines and stuff like that in 1 Samuel saying, "Oh no, we've heard about what your God does." When they came across Jericho, Jericho was shaking at the knees because they heard of what the God of Israel did. Was it enough to convince them to try to seek him spiritually? No. Were they trying to convert? No, but they were scared of what that God may or may not be able to do, and what he may or may not do, right? So I think that's how they would have viewed it. That's how I would have. I've come across atheists and agnostics even before being born again, where I was a lukewarm at best, where you'd have people like that, where they would say things and you'd be like, I thought you weren't a Christian. They say, oh no, I'm not, but I'm still not trying to piss him off. And I'm like, but you just said he doesn't exist. and before being born again, I would think that's weird, and I would just move forward. And then after being born again, it's like, no, dude, we have to sit down and talk about this because you're contradicting yourself and you don't see it. Okay, so they sit down and speak to one another because one of them has to stay, right?
Yep.
And says, we're guilty concerning our brother. That's their first reaction. They assume it has to do with that. That's their biggest sin. That's their biggest regret, right? And they have other things they did. I mean, Simeon and Levi killed all those people of that city with the whole situations with Diana.
Yeah.
Right. And Reuben slept with Bilhah. Right. Yep. Judah has the whole situation with Tamar.
Yep.
I remember at the beginning of the video, I said Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. I'm going to be bringing these guys up, and we're getting to the point now where I'm going to start bringing them up in ways that I don't think a lot of people are used to, especially with your average churches, not bashing their sermons or anything like that. But I think I'm going to be bringing some new things in for some certain listeners.
Most people don't think they did anything wrong ever. Judah, hey, that's the line of the tribe of Judah. Judah's been perfect their whole time. Come on.
Hey, so speaking of Joseph being the image and picture and the type and things like that, he went from a shepherd's crook to a ruling scepter. Right?
There's so much. Man.
Came to the brethren to save them, right? And then was given throne. Right? There's all kinds of things. And I'd say the rainbow coat.
His brethren was standing before him, but they didn't know that he was the king.
Right, for sure. Yeah. And they struck him and parted his robes, whether it was seamless or not is beside the point.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so Reuben's saying, didn't I tell you not to kill the kid? Didn't I tell you not to do this? And you didn't listen. And Joseph's hearing him, and they didn't know that he understood Hebrew, because what are the odds that Egyptians who abhor Hebrews and find them abomination, especially shepherds, right? And these guys would smell like the flock.
Right.
Whether they had an evil report or not, they're going to still smell like a shepherd.
Yep.
Right. So, okay. So anyways, so he turns from them and he goes to weep and he cries, and then he returns them again, communes with them. And he took Simeon. Okay, Jeff, I have, for the first time ever for me, a theory why it's Simeon. Do you have a theory as to why it's Simeon?
No, I don't have a theory on this. This may be zinger number 2 tonight.
Okay, so this is just me for the past 2 weeks, okay? So if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But this is what I'm getting at, because I kept getting this past 2 weeks, and especially the last 2 days, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. And so I went all the way back to Abraham and started reading through to see where I can get ready for this what would have been last week's, but this week's study and stuff like that. And I'm going, okay, why Simeon? Because this was one of the weirdest ones, right? And I felt it right away. Well, Reuben was the oldest, but Simeon, second born of Levi, would have been the oldest that would have been responsible and there for the selling of Joseph.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have Reuben he's got the guilt and the shame, and he's the one that's like, look, I said we didn't. I told you guys not to do this, right? So he has this guilt and shame and things like that too.
Yeah.
And he didn't get to cover. I'm seeing a lot of reconciliation, a lot of restoration options. Reuben wanted to use Joseph as a way to get back in the graces of his father. It was yanked away from him. Simeon was the oldest in charge of the group at the time of the selling of Joseph, and he gave in. So now, as he sold him to be a slave, he has to be a prisoner. Okay,
man, I think you hit it.
I'm telling you, there's a couple other ones I got. I got a couple other ones. Okay, but Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Okay, we need to be thinking about these things because I think we talked about that in the last 2 Joseph videos. We talked a lot about understanding the families and the dynamics and looking at the genealogy and looking at how they see each other and how these things. I mean, this is a messed up family. Yeah. Constantly, Jacob saying "my son" to his 10 sons, "my son," and he's got the 4 wives, and then and one of them slept with the mother of his brothers, and it's all kinds of weird stuff, man. Yeah, real dysfunctional family. I mean, they wanted to murder him, and then they sell him as a slave. I mean, it's all kinds of it is. It's a mess, which shows that God can use a family that is dysfunctional and messed up, for His purpose, and not even necessarily just one within the family, right? I'm just saying there's all kinds of things we can see here. Okay, so Joseph commands them to go. He takes Simeon. I told you why I think he took Simeon, and he puts the money back in the sack, right? Okay, so they're
I like it where it says, "and bound him before their eyes."
Yeah. Well, so was Joseph.
Yeah, so exactly.
It's tit for tat on a lot of things in a lot of ways, but in a merciful way. Okay, so they're with their donkeys, right? Which there's some funny verses in there that David Guzik talked about, how they were like, "Oh no, we're going to go to prison and our donkeys," and he's like, what kind of thought? Who thinks like this? So, anyways, they have their donkeys and they've got their wheat, their provision, and stuff like that. And as one of them opened his sack, he finds money, and it was in the mouth of the sack. Okay, they don't know about the rest of the money and the other sacks until later. So there's a couple of things to consider. First off, who was it? Second off, why didn't he check everybody else's sacks, right? Yeah. But Jeff, do you have a theory as to who this is? Because it only says it's one of them.
Oh.
Have you ever thought about it?
I've never even thought of it, no.
Okay, so the past couple weeks, especially the past couple days, I'm sitting there going, well, God, I keep feeling like God's tugging on my heart. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going, okay, well, it's not Simeon. Right? Because he's in prison. So we know it's not him.
Yeah.
We know it's not prison. Yeah, and we know it's not Benjamin, obviously. And we know it's not Joseph, obviously, right? These are the ones that we can clearly deduct out right now when you're looking at Dan, Gad, Asher, Naphtali, stuff like that. Yeah. These guys aren't really big key role players in this whole story. And the ones that seem to be sticking out the most, honestly, are Reuben and Judah, and then Simeon, right? Levi isn't really mentioned much.
Yeah.
You've got his children mentioned when they're going to Egypt, but nothing else. Okay, so my first thought was Reuben, right? I'm like, he's the oldest one. He would check his thing first, right? Yeah. And then I thought, well, hold on. It's
what about Judah?
What about Levi, because of each of them having their roles? And then all of a sudden it came up of it's Judah, right? And then I was like, well, hold up. Who sold them for coins?
Judah.
So who would be convicted in finding coins?
Man, that's beautiful.
Who would be strongly convicted if it was indeed that Yah says you did this for a profit, and I can give you the provision of what that money would get you, and you keep your money if it's so in my will to do so.
Yeah.
You don't, you saying that you're doing this for coins when really that was just a justification for what you already had, the hatred in your heart. It is not even accurate because I could provide you.
Well, and you also have the whole chapter 38 thrown in the middle of the story with Judah and Tamar. Judah's pretty loose with his money, going around buying certain services.
Right.
So wow, man, that's good.
Yeah. So I'm just throwing out there my
doesn't say it, but
where I'm sitting.
I think you make a really good case.
I think it's worth considering that maybe it's Judah, but it's not really worth going into. It's just one of those, if it was Judah, it makes sense. That's all I'm going to say, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, So he says to his brethren, hey, my money's restored and it's even in my sack. And their first reaction, you know, David Guzik said, you buy a car, you leave the lot, and you find all the money that you used in cash in the trunk. Is your first reaction, God, what have you done to me? You know, like you won the lottery, and yet their shame and their guilt is so bad that their heart fails them. But you know, it's funny because like I see Guzik's point here, and he's really funny, and he's a brilliant guy, and I really enjoyed his sermon. But I'm sitting there going, my thoughts are, you know, they got away from being put in prison. This is a very dire situation. We're talking about bread that you need for life. This is life or death in the scales here.
Yeah.
It weighed in the balances is life or death on their decisions here. The Pharaoh who they went to get food from that was selling food to everybody else. I don't think they saw other people being accused of being spies.
That was my point a while ago. Yeah.
Right. And I got that.
Yeah,
So
people are coming from everywhere doing this stuff, and then bam, they're accused of spies, and then right here they get back, and like you say, hey, the money that we went to purchase this, it's in the bag. Oh my gosh, and we still have to go. We have to take Benjamin and go back
to get Simeon. And so now we're not spies, we're spies, and we're thieves. We're thieving spies. You know, this is bad.
It's bad.
Yeah, it's really bad. And so they go to, what do they do for the first time in this whole section? They go and tell them the truth, at least to some degree, right? They actually go and tell their dad, and they tell him the truth, right? And they tell him, they say, you know, oh, what is this unto us? You know, the land of the Lord of the land spoke roughly to us, took us for spies, and we said we're true men, we're no spies, and we're 12 brethren and sons of one father, and the youngest is this day with our father in Canaan. And they said, you know, how do we know if we're true? Then if you go get them. So Simeon's back there, right? And they say, and we've got the money. And so of course, what is Jacob's response? You bereaved me, right? What have you done to me? You know, and so Jacob says, you know, you've bereaved me of my children, my children, right? He goes, Joseph is not, that other guy Simeon, you know, and now you want to take away Benjamin, right? At least that's the vibe I get. You know, Joseph is gone, Simeon's in prison, and you want to take Benjamin. That's kind of how it comes across when you start looking at all the context of things, right? Yeah. And so he's, you know, how many of my children are you going to take from me? How much is not enough kind of thing for you, you know? And so now Reuben speaks up.
This is powerful here.
Reuben speaks up, firstborn, taking the authority and taking the responsibility as the eldest, and says, slay my two sons, which he doesn't actually mean, but he you know, on my mama is what we used to say in the streets, right? On my mama's grave, whatever, et cetera, right?
On my kids.
Right. And that's what Reuben's saying. He's putting that out there, not as an actual sacrifice, but he's kind of saying, like, you know, this is how important my credit's on the line, my name's on the line. But Jeff, what if those two sons are from Bilhah?
Oh man.
I know. I've never heard anybody say it, but I can't help but think it, Jeff. And so maybe I'm missing some verses that prove that that's not the case, but I went back and I tried to look, and
wow.
What if Reuben, who it seems, because Reuben didn't sell Joseph into slavery. Reuben was like, I talked them out of murder. I told them to put him in a well, and I was going to go back and get him. So what's his biggest offense? A, he didn't stop it, and B, he slept with one of the concubines, one of the third wife, right?
Yeah.
So what if he's like, you know, I know you despise my two children. If you lose your two children from your favored wife, you can kill my two children from the wife that shouldn't be my wife.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
Tit for tat. I'm telling you, that's all I keep seeing in here.
Wow.
And again, it's a twofold: 1, 2, 7 good years, 7 bad years. Butler, Baker, you know, Potiphar's house and dungeon, and, you know, good years and bad years, and so on and so forth. You've got Joseph being on the one end, and now the tables are turned constantly. Good and bad, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. So I just can't help but think that that's what this is.
Slay my two sons. God sits before us a choice today: blessings or curse.
Right. And he said, so you can kill them if I don't bring him back. If I don't bring Benjamin back. If you lose your two favorite, you can take my two sons. And what is Jacob's response? My son shall not go down with you. And, I was talking to a member of the body today, a brother that I haven't talked to in a long time tonight,
Yeah.
and he said, and we were talking about things, and I said, and we were talking about wrestling with God when we should know better,
Yeah.
hearing from God on what to do, and we were both giving examples of times that we were not so happy with ourselves that we knew God was telling us to do or not to do something, and we were just like, it'll be fine. Or we get a warning about something and we don't take it seriously and we didn't realize how bad it was going to be. And then afterwards we're like, man, I'm such an idiot. This is Yaakov. This is Jacob. This is post hip displacement.
Yeah.
When you wrestle with God and your hip gets popped out, you now have a physically and spiritually different walk. You feel me?
Right. Yeah.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Your physical walk and your spiritual walk are no longer the same because you wrestled with God to the point where your hip was pulled out of socket, was displaced. Okay, so even after that, now Jacob, one generation after Isaac, who was given freely as a offering, it was offered to be an offering by Abraham, right?
Right. Yeah.
One generation later, I don't think Isaac would have been so quick to say, no, I will not give up my son for the betterment, if that's what God wants me to do. I don't think Isaac would have been as hard-headed as Jacob here. One generation later, and it's already forgotten. It's kind of like Abraham, had children by more than just Sarah.
Right.
And Isaac saw how that didn't work out. And Isaac didn't make the same mistake.
Right.
But then one generation later, what do we see again? And I know he was supposed to marry Rachel, but Jacob did have that option to stick with Leah. He did have that option. And I will argue, and I've argued this before, that Leah, at the end of the day, might have even been the favorite on the deathbed.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing to say, and a lot of people don't like me saying that, but Rachel was buried off to the side and Leah wasn't. You feel me? And a lot of people don't look at that, and you talk about moving dead bodies, and, well, they were on the way. That doesn't matter. Joseph, Abraham, Moses. How many times do we see dead bodies getting moved, Jeff? And you're going to tell me that they don't want to carry a stinking body. I'm not buying it.
Yeah.
She was buried on the wayside. Okay, whatever. She's the one that was hiding the idols that almost got them killed. Okay, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, Rachel was making deals on the side. There was all kinds of problems with Rachel. She was constantly butting heads with things.
Yeah.
Not so much with Leah. Leah's naming her children like, maybe my husband will love me now.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, man. I'm just saying. Everybody looks at the Rachel and they forget about Leah, and I'm like, man, Leah was dealt a hard hand. That's all I'm saying.
How would you like being Leah, knowing that your husband loved someone else and preferred them over you?
Yeah.
Gosh, I've been with you these 7 years.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's
she had Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah before there was any other children. Yeah. Surely, and then Rachel's like, all right, that's fine. I'm going to bring a handmaid into the mix. I got an ace of spades in my sleeve.
Yeah. What's
and then so Leah's like, I've got an army, a troop cometh, right? With Gad. I crack up every time I read that when I'm reading through it. And she's like, well, she has Gad, and she's like, a troop cometh. And I'm like, oh man, those are fighting words now. She really is like, we're at war.
Yeah.
I just think that's funny. But okay, so anyways, so Reuben says, you can kill my two sons. And Jacob says, no, you can't have my son. He does not do what the father does. He does not do what the father does, where he's willing to give up his son.
Yeah.
And in Jacob's eyes right now, it kind of seems like Benjamin is his one and only son.
Yeah.
He has 11 children. He has 12 children, but one he thinks is dead. But one is his son. Okay, so we're at 43. Famine sore in the land, and they had eaten up the corn or the wheat from Mitzrayim. And the father says, go buy us more food. And Judah's like, hey, hold on now. The guy that talks about logic, logistics, business, and money. Look, we'll go down there, but you got to remember, we can't go back unless you give us Benjamin. There's no way we're going back because he straight up said we cannot see his face without Benjamin.
So we don't really know how long this took.
We do know in the scripture it says it was in the second year. If you
Right.
go down a couple more chapters, Joseph
Yeah.
does say this is the second year, and this is when he's telling them just come down to Egypt. This is after they find out it's Joseph. And it's funny because when I was reading that today and yesterday and stuff like that, I was thinking, man, he's sitting there going, you had to come back twice. You had to come twice for food, and it's only the second year. We've got 5 more bad, and he straight up tells them that. He says, this is the second year.
Yeah.
You've got 5 more of the famine. Come to Egypt. I'll take care of you. Were
My-
they going to come every year?
My thought is the reason I brought this up. We don't know how long it took them to go through this food and eat it up, and they're having this conversation.
Right. Well, you also have time of travel.
Yeah.
And second year could be beginning of the second year or almost.
But my thought is what about Simeon? we
They
left him in jail, right?
They don't care, Jeff.
They don't even care. That was my point. How long? I mean, they're sitting down there. They're with their wives. They're with their families.
Yeah.
They're okay. They've got all this. They've left Simeon back in jail. They know that something screwy went on. They had money in the bag. I mean, they've got all this guilt going on, and they've just been putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. You know, they did bring it up to their dad, and their dad's like, "No, we ain't doing this."
Right.
But,
and they're like, "Okay, well, it is what it is." And we're not going back without Benjamin.
Yeah.
We tried. There's nothing we can do. We can't go back without Benjamin. And then after a little bit of time, he did kill a bunch of people with Levi. Yeah. Well, he was the oldest brother when we sold. He could have talked us out of selling. Reuben tried to talk us out of murder. Simeon could have talked us out of human trafficking.
There we go.
You see what I'm saying?
So that was my point. Is what's going through their minds this whole time?
That's what I think is going through their minds. In the beginning, I think they felt bad, but after a while, they're just like, you know what? It's kind of like the mafioso, you know. Mob boss goes to prison. Okay, we'll take care of you. Feel bad, but then after a little bit, like, well, we're taking care of the family. We're feeding the family. The children are getting food. The wife is getting food.
He's doing his part.
This guy wasn't completely innocent anyways, you know. I mean, we're just glad we didn't go down for racketeering, and it's all of us. That's what they're really thinking, Jeff.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, look, if it was for Joseph, they'd all be in trouble except for Benjamin. So they're sitting there going like, 1 for 10 ain't bad. You know what I'm saying? Like it is what it is. At least it was just Simeon and not the rest of us. Yeah. And Simeon hated Joseph just as much as the rest of them. So, you know, why not? Why not Simeon? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So you know, he's the murderer. You know, I mean, Jacob himself, he says about Simeon and Levi that cruelty are in their instruments. I mean, you know. Yeah. So he was apparently not a nice guy, on top of the fact that he's murdering a city of people and stuff. Okay. So Judah brings up the logistics and the logic and the business and says, look, we'll go, but you have to give us Benjamin or we're not going. I'm not going down there. He said he won't see, he can't even see his face. It's pointless. It's a waste of time. We might end up in prison. It's not happening. Yeah. And so then Yaakov, Israel says, you know, why are you so ill with me? He's blaming them, right? And he said, why'd you even tell him you had a brother? And they're like, how would we even know that he's going to ask that? You know, it's almost like he knew us. And like we were going to know that he was going to tell us to bring our brother down. We were scared. We were distressed, you know, but also desperate. Yeah. And they're like, we're honest men, which is like, yeah, okay, kind of, you know, I mean, you are being honest now, but I mean, you're still hiding about the Joseph thing. You're literally still saying, you know, just like you told the Pharaoh, you're still repeating the same words to the brother. Well, one is not. You know what I mean? So it's okay. So then Judah says, send the lad, right? Which if you look at the Hebrew, it's more like young man, which can refer up to like early 30s, right? Yeah. Send Benjamin with me, and it's almost like he's not even using names. Like that's going to trigger and raise flags and stuff like that. So he's like, just send your son with us, send him with us, and we'll bring him back, right? You know, and sometimes we're careful with our words for reasons, right? Yeah. And send him, and we'll go that we may live and not die, all of us and our little ones. And you see, there's a reference there and an ending there of the little ones, like, you know, you've got your little one, but we actually have little ones, your grandchildren of your sons that are not your sons, right? Yeah. And he said, I'll be the surety, you know, and he's going to say on my head, on my name, right? Yeah. So now Judah's taking, okay, so we talked about Reuben. We've talked about Simeon. right? And unless Levi was the coin, which could have been a reference to the priests and taxation and Levites down the road and things like that.
Right.
I'm more convinced of Judah, but either way. So now we have Judah again. He's saying on me, on my head, on my name, like Reuben said with his two sons, right?
Mhm.
Well, put your money where your mouth is what happens.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, you got to be careful with what you say. So Judah says on me. And he said, if I don't bring him, then let the blame be on me forever, right? Because he's the one that convinced them to sell Joseph.
Yep.
So now he would be the reason why he would not have two. So
Right.
there is some guilt and shame there, and he's willing to take the responsibility. And he said, surely if we hadn't waited, we would have already been back by now. So we know that there's been enough time for there and back again.
Right.
Not a hobbit's tale, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Israel says, okay, if you must do it, do it. Take some extra, right? Take the money that you brought back.
Double.
Take double, and then money to also buy on top of that. Also, don't go empty-handed, right? This is like when this is the same guy who did the same thing with Esau. He split up his,
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? He sent up his family ahead, right? And he sent gifts and things like this, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just saying something to think about here is, he had those go ahead and he gave them gifts and stuff. And so he's thinking the same mindset, don't go empty handed and it'll go over better,
Yeah.
Okay. So they go and then he goes, may Yah have mercy on you before the man. They may send away your brother, but so if not, if I'm bereaved, I'm bereaved. And it's kind of funny because Guzik was talking about this. He's like, you had faith and then you didn't have faith. You know what I mean? It's like, you're like,
Right.
may Yah bless you and keep you. But if he doesn't, well, I tried. And it's like, you didn't even just believe the words that just came out of your mouth. You literally just took them back.
Yeah.
Okay, so they took the present, they took double the money, and they take Benjamin with. They take old Benny. And Joseph sees Benjamin. Now you've got the 11, right? And so he goes, okay, go kill, make the food ready, bring him back to the house, right?
Yep.
And so they're afraid because they're brought to Joseph's house, and the money that was in their sack that was returned to them, right? And so, and it says that he may seek occasion against us, fall upon us, and take us for bondsmen and our donkeys. There it is, 43 verse 18, and our donkeys.
They're still hung up about the donkeys.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's very important to agriculturalists and to farmers.
Yeah.
And shepherds and things. I just think it's funny because they're like, we might go to prison, we might die, and he'll take our donkeys. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and they came near to the steward of Joseph's house and they commune with him. And they're like, hey, we brought double money somehow, some way. We don't know what happened, but money got returned back to our sacks. And we didn't want you thinking that we did that. So we brought that back and double and money to buy stuff. And they said, no, that, this is the guy in charge of things, not Joseph. And he says, no, that was God. That was your God giving you your stuff back, right? And the man brought them into Joseph's house, gives them water, washes their feet. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
And they made ready the present for Joseph at noon. And he gets there, and then the Egyptian people that work for him are eating separately. Why? Because Egyptians abhor Hebrews, especially shepherds, right?
Yep.
So when the only reason I bring that up is like Joseph was being curt with them, and he's treating them like an Egyptian would, and nothing stands out because they're Hebrew. So he can get away with that. On top of the fact that he has the authority to get away with it, whether it sticks out or not. Nobody
second command. He's got the ring on.
He's got the ring. You can't touch him, but they're not going to even think anything funny about it. They're just like, oh yeah, he doesn't like Hebrew shepherds either. They do smell.
Typical Egyptian. There you go.
They're furry and everything. Okay, so he asks about the dad, right? They bow down again, right?
Yeah.
And this time Benjamin's with them, and he's holding back the urge to be like, it's me. So he goes to cry in the other rooms. They don't see it, washes his face. Why? Because they still haven't gotten to that point where you're going to get reconciliation and restoration. That's what I'm seeing, right? Because if he jumps at it right now.
You see his heart. You really, both times you see his heart. He's wanting to. And I'm telling you, I think that God spoke to him about what to do, how to do it. And I'm just seeing his heart here. This is something.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so too. Okay, so the Egyptians are eating off to the side, and then they had the firstborn to the oldest to the youngest sitting in an order.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is accurately, but it was said statistically that the chances of doing that on accident is like something like 1 in 40 million.
Wow.
I don't know if that's accurate, but
Joseph just sits them down. There you go.
Yeah, they have their plates with their name tags on them, and they've got them in order. Now they know their order, and it's very important to them because they're Hebrews.
Yeah.
They are raised by Jacob, and they know that in order, there's a pecking order, and there's things that go with that. But this is in Egypt to strangers like that. That's again another tip off of the old hat, and they're not catching it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So and then Benjamin's mess is 5 times more. Why is that?
And that's his meal, guys. That's a little King James language. That's his meal. They're sitting down to dinner, and they're serving them the plates, and all of a sudden, Benjamin has 5 times the amount of food put on his plate.
No, it's mess. He was a messy eater. He got spaghetti. Everybody else didn't, Jeff. I'm telling you.
He was a messianic. There you go.
Yeah. There you go. I'm gonna have to take that one. I gotta remember that one.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, but so why though, Jeff? The question is why? Why did he have 5 times as much more food?
Well, I think this gets into even with the gold, the silver cup and all this stuff. I think that that Joseph knew about Benjamin's favor. I think that Benjamin was being favored here also by Joseph. That's his blood brother. But he also knew how much Jacob blessed Joseph when he was there and showed him favoritism. And I think he's carrying that on and showing that even further. So I see a twofold thing, because he's his brother and because he also knew how his father was and his name. We know that Benjamin later is prophesied as that ravenous wolf. I see a pattern where Jacob in his old age is blessing and blessing and blessing so much that he gets some people that are spoiled. We see Benjamin later getting into trouble because he was so spoiled. He thought things were just due him. That's a big lesson to us sometimes. Sometimes we think that we're due. But this is Benjamin here. I think it's because of the relationship, primarily the relationship that Joseph has with Benjamin. That's my thought.
Okay. So what do you think the odds are that, much like how Reuben and Simeon, maybe Levi, definitely Judah, are all getting convicted on their roles in this matter, Joseph has a 2-part conviction here to Benjamin of you're being favored as the one and only of the favorite wife, even though that was supposed to be my spot. You're getting my rainbow coat, so I'm going to give it to you just so you can be like, hey, this isn't from Dad. What's up with that? And a conviction there of like, man, I really do get more than everybody else. Twofold. And the other brethren are like, well, isn't this something that we're familiar with? To elicit a reaction, not just from the brothers, but you got to understand, Joseph is saying, why is it okay that he is favored and not sold? Why is it okay that I was sold? He is not. You thought about killing me. You didn't think about killing him. He wants to see, is there a change of heart? But also there's a conviction of like, hey, Rachel's son, didn't you want to kill him because of favoritism? Didn't he get more than you? So he gives him more. He gives him the silver cup. He gives him the favoritism. He wants to see, is there a change of heart? But also a reminder of like, hey, where does this sound familiar? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's good. The stuff that I'm seeing. And I just wanted to know what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, well, if that was the case, which I definitely can see that, it says, and they drank and were merry with him.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were so excited to see that first that Simeon was not dead from being in jail for a little over 2 years, right? And I'm sure Simeon was glad to be out. They were all high-fiving and patting each other on the back. Hey, we were thinking we were going to be received poorly. The guy said, no, this was your God blessing you with the coin. Hey, we sit down at this big fancy dinner. How in the world did we all get put in the right order? And then look, my thought is, dadgum Benjamin, here we go. He's always getting he's getting spoiled rotten by Dad, and now he comes over here and he's getting spoiled rotten by Joseph. That's what I think. Well, they didn't know it was.
Okay. So here's the thing, Jeff.
Yeah.
They're drinking and they're merry and they're happy.
Yeah.
Their conscience seems to be cleaner at this point. They had the option to say, screw it, forget Simeon, and they didn't. They had, Reuben stood up and said, slay my 2 sons. Judah said, on my name.
Been repentance, yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So I think there is a cleaner conscience, and I think that, and so I was close to 40 million. It's 39.916,800 800. So I was close to the. Oh, I went to put it right after you did.
There you
I
go.
said 1 in 40 million. I was off by less than a million, by about less than 100,000. Okay,
There you go.
So that's pretty close. That are the odds of a stranger getting the 11, not the 12, the 11 in order, youngest to oldest.
That's crazy.
Which they see that and they think it's weird and they marvel at, but then they get the food and they forget about it, I think. And they start eating and they drink and it feels familiar. They're sitting in the order that they would have sat at home. There's no blowhard. The dad's not sitting there sad. I mean, Joseph is gone, okay? And you can move on with life, but you lost a child. And I don't know if anybody who's lost a child who is able to just you can move on, but you don't get over it. There's a difference. You continue with life, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't bother you, that it's not constantly being bothered, that you don't you see what I'm saying? They're not dealing with that right now. They're not getting constant reminders of what they did with Joseph. All they can think is, we actually did the right thing with the favored son of Rachel. We finally righted our wrongs. We had a second chance of this, and we actually got it right this time. And they're not feeling as weighed down and stuff like that. They got all first moment they find the money in the second. The first thought goes, "This is because of what we did with Joseph. You got to put somebody in prison. This is because of what we did with Joseph. We got to go back with Benjamin. This is because of what we did with Joseph." Things are finally starting to feel okay, and their first thought isn't, "Oh, we're getting a feast and things are going good," because it's about to go bad because of what we did to Joseph. There is a changing of heart. There is a growth. There is a character development that has happened with Joseph, but also his brethren. And they're finally starting to catch up with it. During this process of reconciliation and restoration. Okay, so that's what I'm seeing.
That's good.
Okay, so he commands the steward of the house, fill the sacks with food, and as much as they can carry, put the money back in the thing again.
Right? I just love this. I love this, man. This is just great.
And put the silver cup in Benjamin's, right? It's not a silver spoon, but kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of is, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, you're born with the silver spoon. He would be the son of Rachel that gets to go through all this because he's got the silver cup. Why not? It fits him. He gets the silver spoon too. Okay, so they get far off, and they were sent with provision as well. Did you catch that? They were given provision for their donkeys and things like that. You know, they were given their money back, their food, and extra. So, I mean, he's hooking up things. This is like the third or fourth sign that should have stuck him as like the Pharaoh's right-hand man did what now? He gave
why is he blessing us so much? He doesn't do this. Does he just do this all the time? He just picks random people and no.
Right. Something's off, but they're just going to roll with it. For the first time, they're going to roll with it and not think it's because of what they did to Joseph. And so they get out to the city, not yet far off. Here we go again. This third time now on the whole far off thing. And Joseph says to the steward, "Okay, they're far enough away, but not far enough away where you can't catch them. Go catch them and go find the silver cup." And so the guy knows he's in on it, right? He knows, but hey, you do what the master says, right? Yep. So he goes in there, and you notice that they check from the oldest to the youngest, you know, and it says that they got off the donkeys quickly. Did you catch that, Jeff? And they said, "Why did you reward good with evil? Why would you do this?" And they said, and it says that they got off their donkeys quickly, and they were quick to do it, right? Because they were confident they didn't steal anything, you know. You know, so they're emptying them and everything's fine, and then they get to Benjamin's. Okay. Now Reuben said, "If I don't bring them back, kill my two sons." Judah said, "Let it forever be bared on me." If we don't bring him back. And son, what is it with the sons of Rachel? You know, they're sitting there thinking that, like, man, what kind of crap is this? You know?
They rent their clothes. They rent their clothes right there, man. Verse 13. You know. So when I'm sure they did have other sets of clothes. But you know, it's a long journey.
Yeah, but they're so upset. It doesn't matter at this point. Is prison or death, and like, man, we put our words on the line. We put our names.
My kids are going to die. You know, all this stuff.
You can also remember, Jeff.
Yeah.
When they went back after they sold Joseph, they didn't move out from under their dad's umbrella. So for 22 years, they've been watching it eat their dad alive.
Oh,
And you see this because
yeah,
later on they're talking about, no, we have to bring Benjamin back. Otherwise, it's going to bring down the gray hairs of my dad. Judah's like,
yeah,
I don't want to see this. I've already seen it before. I don't want to see it again. The guilt and the conviction and the shame. And now they thought they did things right. They righted their wrongs and they still didn't get it right because Benjamin's about to go anyways.
yeah,
And the guy that works for Joseph is like, it's fine. We're just going to take Benjamin. You guys can go back. What are you stressing about? And they're like, no, dude, you don't get it. That's worse. It would be better if I stayed. And in fact, right? Okay, so in that what's offered here. And they said, no, we can't go back to the father. The child of his old age and a little one and a brother is dead and he's left alone, right? And his brother is dead. Yeah. Okay.
rough.
So, yeah, right. And they said, no, you can't leave him. The father would die unless the youngest come. And so they're telling the whole story about how they had to bring him back. And you know that my wife bare me 2 sons. Right. See, they all understand. And at this point, they're not even bashing him. They're like, no, you don't get it. There's 12 of us, but really in dad's eyes, there's 2 and one's gone. And this is number 2. You can't do this. And so, yeah, doesn't one of them offer up? Let me see. Yeah. And then Judah says, I'll bear the blame to my father forever. Let me abide instead. Judah has to eat his words and see, is the offer actually there? Just like with Reuben. Yeah. Just, and just like with Simeon and things like that, you see there's this offer made, but is the change of heart really there? Are they willing to actually make good?
Yeah.
Have they really grown? And so this is Judah should have tried to restore. Picture of Judah needing to bring back the little children. Yeah, so this is Yeah, so this is Judah. He makes good on his word. And he says, no. It would be better for me to stay. Plus, I don't want to see my dad to go through this again, but I put it on my name and everything like that. It'll kill him. Just, let me stay. And at that point now, Joseph has seen Simeon, Reuben, and Judah.
Yeah.
Probably the 3 main.
Yeah.
Who pushed everything.
Yep.
The oldest. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, and I think Levi was in the mix there too.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So that's some of the things I wanted to bring up that I don't hear brought up in Joseph videos. And I wanted to bring up, and when you watch the videos of the pastors, and some of them preach things way better than I would and stuff like that. But these are some of the things that I don't see being brought up that I think is worth being brought up. Because if we can start realizing these aren't just names, this isn't just ink on paper, this is actually how it went down, and there's reasons why we're supposed to see this. We're supposed to be able to relate with the Reuben and Simeon and Levi and Judah, along with Joseph and the Pharaoh and stuff like that. When you look at the prison keeper and Pharaoh and Potiphar, they have these things that God has given them, and they have the option to surrender to the one that was given to them, the one who was sent to them, the Yeshua, the Joseph that was sent to them. You could either surrender to him and let it flourish,
right,
and let him have control of your things,
right,
or you can say, you can be a part of my life, but you will not be the keeper of all my stuff.
Right.
We should be able to relate to all these characters. So we look at Reuben and Simeon and Levi and Judah. Okay, maybe we didn't traffic an actual physical brother, but was there times that we watched somebody of the body, or somebody we cared about, fall for deception, and spiritually they were trafficked with that deception, and at best, like Reuben, we said, okay, guys, slow down, calm down. I know you're into that thing.
Right.
Let's talk about this later when things are calmed down, but it's too late at that point because the passion overtakes them. How many times have we said, well, I can benefit from this interaction, like Judah?
Right. Yeah.
Well, he's already gonna die anyways. Might as well sell him out. Okay, maybe we didn't do that with actual murder and money, or maybe somebody listening has. I don't know. But either way, the Father, Yeshua, shows unrighteous anger and hatred and murder is all on the same level. So when we're looking at Reuben and Simeon and Levi and Judah and this whole situation, so and we get a twofold. We get the guilt and the shame, and not the guilt and the shame, but the conviction of, I've done that kind of.
Yeah.
I didn't physically human traffic anybody, but I've watched a brother go in chains towards spiritual Mitzrayim, and I didn't stop it. I let the Midianites, I let the Ishmaelites, I let them take them, and I didn't stop it.
Well, I think of like Matthew 25, where we see Yeshua talking about separating the goats and the sheep.
The wheat and the tares, sure.
Yeah. So what was the deciding factor? And Yeshua talks about, well, you know, you went out and you clothed the naked, you fed the hungry, you visited the ones that were in prison. To the least of these, you've done this unto me. And so I can see missed. I mean, we can all see missed opportunities. You know, how many people have come on my path? You know, he didn't say that the sheep were going to be the ones that kept all the Torah. He didn't say that the sheep were going to be the ones that were walking in the spiritual gifts. He said that the sheep were going to be the ones that were selflessly giving of themselves, even when no one was looking.
And knew him.
And yeah, there we go.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, you know, here's the thing too, but we can see ourselves as the Reuben, the Simeon, and Levi, and Judah where we've messed up, but we can also see ourselves as the Reuben, Simeon, and Levi, and Judah where reconciliation, restoration. You see, with their interactions with Benjamin, replacing Joseph with Benjamin, taking the chance to say, we messed up with Joseph, but not again, not again.
Yeah.
But their works didn't save them. You see, because everything they did, everything they should have done to save Joseph, they did with Benjamin, and what still happened? Benjamin still ended up with the silver cup because it's outside of our hands. It's outside of our control. This is Cain and Abel. You have the works and you have the given grace.
Yeah.
And works are good, but works aren't going to save you.
Yeah.
Right? Just like grace without works is faith without works is still dead. And so you see what I'm saying though? And so with the Reuben, Simeon, and Levi and Judah, we see ourselves, okay, we've done these things, but we can also receive restoration and reconciliation. It might be a long process. It might take some time. It might not be fun, but the shame, the guilt of something we did 20 years ago can be gone.
Well,
and not by us just by doing the right things the next time we get a chance. That's not what actually fixes it.
So just like Joseph, we talked about Joseph earlier, being on that roller coaster. Man, God's starting to move. God's starting to move. Bam. God's starting to move again. Bam. Same thing is also happening to the brothers.
Yeah.
Man, we're starting to be blessed. Wow, we're getting this. This is great. We're finally starting to walk in this forgiveness, this anointing. Things are happening. Bam. You know, they get back and they've got money when they go back home. They come back. Hey, all's been forgiven. Now this was great. This was great. And everything. Wow, look how much we're being blessed. I don't even understand all this. This is just, you know, they had to be talking about the favor of God being on them. Things are great. We're great. And then bam, here comes this servant. I guarantee he wasn't alone. I guarantee he had some soldiers with him.
Yeah.
And they approach him. Oh man. And then, so again, like you're talking about that tit for tat. These guys were on the Joseph's roller coaster. And now Joseph was, not the one riding it. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
This is so good tonight, man.
Yeah.
So many things. This is awesome.
Yeah. This was good. This was good. You know, hey, you think those were silver coins?
Oh gosh, yeah, I think they were. Yeah, it doesn't say it. It doesn't say it, but I think they were. Yeah.
You know, I mean, because some argue that it could have been gold or whatever, and it's a time of famine. We're talking wheat, right, or corn or whatever, and inflation, baby. Prices have gone up.
Yeah.
So whatever it was for the time period was super expensive. I mean, we're talking two-thirds of a dove's dung part selling for however much type of times. You know what I mean?
Right,
I know that's a different time of scripture, but it's that kind of desperation, that kind of severity.
Yeah.
But I just can't help but wonder, was it a little leather bag of silver coins, much like the ones that were used to buy the potter's field? You know what I'm saying? I'm just like, you know, because you see so much of the other similarities here, you know.
Oh man, this is good stuff. I'll tell you, I think it would be a great study for someone to go and you're right. You can't do this even in 1 week, going back and rereading and going through and trying to find all of the similarities and all the references that Yeshua has with
there's so many. Yeah. There's so many. There's some I'm forgetting, and there's some that I was just like, I didn't want to spend the time tonight to try to go, but it's so much.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
You can really have all of them and just you could have a list and start trying to go through them and maybe talk about each one 2 or 3 minutes, and you'd have a program just this long. Yeah.
So here's the thing, Jeff. We stopped at like 45 or something like that, but the rest of it is the blessing of Ephraim and Manasseh and bringing everybody down to Egypt. So in my opinion, this is the life of Joseph's study. Going into I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to bring up, but at this point, this is pretty much all the stuff I wanted to bring up.
I pulled the scripture back up on the screen because I just before we get out, I think you got to go with showing Joseph's heart. It says, then Joseph could not refrain himself before all of them that stood by him, and he cried, cause every man to go out for me. He clears the room, and there stood no man with him while Joseph made himself known unto his brethren. What a reunion. It says he wept aloud, and the Egyptians in the house of Pharaoh heard.
Hey, this time the room is empty. Everybody has cleared out, and there's a screaming, and there's a vulnerability and a transparency, but it's a little bit different than Jessica the Rabbit, right? I'm just saying, throughout this whole thing, you can find duality of things, tit for tat.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, Jeff, it's crazy because literally everything I just mentioned, did that not literally tit for tat for the other one? You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy, man. It's crazy.
I just look at this. This is. Can you imagine? I mean, I am blown away. What build up for Joseph this whole time. He knows what's going on. He knows what's going on in secret. He knows what's happening. He knows that there's some things that Yah is doing behind the scenes on every one of his brothers' hearts. We haven't even talked about all the other brothers, but they were still part of it. They were still part of it, right?
I don't think they had as big of a role, but Gad, Asher, Naphtali, Dan.
Every one of them. Yeah, they're all there. And think about the elation. Think about we have the whole thing going on with all the brothers and knowing that they're probably fixing to lose their lives. They're fixing to go through this, and all these things are happening. And then we have Joseph bringing it out, and bam, there's the revelation that Joseph is their brother. I tell you, I can't even imagine. You talk about undercover boss. How about that reveal? Come on.
Yeah, that's good stuff, man.
Yeah,
that's good stuff. Oh man, but yeah, no, I'm good on the Joseph thing. My main takeaway is I wanted to bring up those main stuff, but I wanted to really this time around. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah kept coming up, but also reconciliation, restoration. Those are not unfamiliar terms for the study of Joseph and stuff like that. But this time, studying it out for me, it really hit how it's a process. This was full circle. It was not a very simple, like, hey, it's me, Joseph, I'm still alive, and we're done. And often in life, that's how it goes. I mean, God can change things quickly, and we see that with Joseph coming out of the dungeon, and then all of a sudden he's before Pharaoh. He speaks truth, and then all of a sudden, boom, right? Everything is flipped, and one of the things that kept sticking out me at this time too is Joseph had the rainbow coat, as I like to call it, is multicolored coat, right?
Yeah,
and he's not doing hard work, and he's favored by his dad, and he's there with his family. In the beginning of this study of where we started it from, Joseph's living his life, his best life. That's what people say, right?
Yeah.
Just live your best life. That was Joseph living his best life. In his mind, this was what he wanted. This was the box. This is to say, I'm with my family. I have my stuff. I'm favored. I'm loved. I love my brethren. We're doing good. I know what I'm supposed to do. It doesn't even bring calluses on my hands. This is outstanding. Yeah. He's happy and content with what he had.
Yeah.
And the image and the vision and the purpose, the calling that God had in mind for Joseph involved him being human trafficked, sold as a slave, brought back up as to be in charge of things, not do anything wrong worth attacking, and falsely accused of sexual assault, and then put into dungeon. And then all of that and when he had the rainbow coat, he was above his 11 brothers. And he thought he was in a good position.
Yeah.
And then at the end of this thing, he traded in his rainbow coat from his dad from a fine linen robe from the Pharaoh and has authority over not just his dad's house, not just Potiphar's house, not just the prison, but all of Egypt. He literally ended out so much higher up. His recoding, Jeff, from a glorified shepherd to a second in command.
Yeah.
But he would have never had that in mind. And he would have never thought that it would have taken all these things to get there.
Yeah.
And some of those things, Judah with his money with Tamar,
Yeah.
Reuben with Bilhah,
Yeah.
if those are connected to those other things that I mentioned to you,
man,
those were interwoven as part of it as well.
I think that's one of the things I really like that you were able to bring out in the story all the way through, and showing that not only we're called a tit for tat, but also calling it God calling the end from the beginning. I think that's really important. Karen C had a question. I want to bring this up real quick. You never talked about the silver cup.
We did though.
We did, but you know what? There's a couple things we didn't bring up.
Okay, go for it.
So one of the things that I see with the silver cup, the silver represents judgment. Silver represents judgment, and I see that judgment is being passed. This cup is being passed, and I can't help but think of Yeshua in the garden praying, hey, Father, is there any way this cup can pass for me? This cup wasn't going to be able to pass from Benjamin. That judgment was coming down on him to ultimately bring about God's perfect will. So I see that silver cup being put on Benjamin as a type and shadow of it being put on Yeshua, and a cup that he could not pass, because if that cup hadn't gone into Benjamin's sack, that they would have got away scot-free. But it was the Father's will all the way along.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's a nice little touch up there, Jeff. That was good stuff.
Yeah. Thanks, Karen, for reminding me. I was meaning to bring it up, but man, we got to. That's the. Ian, can I just say I love you, Brian. I love tag teaming with you and talking about, because there is so much that's going on, and I have the hardest time biting my lip, because I'm used to being, if I'm speaking or if I'm used to being the main guy, and all the time I'm having things and I'm just like, you know what? Hey, this is such a beautiful thing, having two brothers be able to come together, go through the scripture, even if we disagree on some things. Listen, I love you, and it's great. I'm not saying that, hey, you had this crazy idea about Simeon and Reuben, and man, it's not concrete clear, but it totally makes sense, and you need to be open to listen to that. I just love it. I think it's awesome, and I appreciate you having me on tonight. Thanks.
No, it was good. I'm glad you messaged on Facebook, man, or else I was going to do it on my own. Because if you hit me up today and not yesterday on Facebook, I would have seen that as a confirmation that we'll do a combo again, but not this one.
Yeah.
And it's not like I wouldn't do this one on my own, but I really didn't want to.
Yeah.
I really didn't. I was like, man, it'd be so much more fun comboing it with Jeff. And I was like, man, I got some things I want to throw at him. He's going to have some things he's going to throw at me.
We always do,
agree
man.
or disagree, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be a back and forth.
Yeah.
And like I told you coming in tonight, like there was a couple times where I was like, oh yeah, I've got an intro video. I forgot it's been 7 months, and I feel like I've never done it before.
Yeah.
So it was, on top of the fact that it's you, one of the few that I like to do combo work with, because there's lots of people, Jeff, that I love, and we'll discuss things with, and we'll listen to and even watch their stuff, but I don't want to do combo work with them. You feel me? You're one of the few, man. There's not many that I work with.
I feel the exact same with you, brother. I tell you what, I'm glad that we were able to get on tonight. I think it was Yah's will. I'm excited about doing other works as He wills with you.
Hey, so we stopped at Daniel early. I left off on 1 Samuel at David killing Goliath. Perfect time to start doing a study on David.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've got Daniel to finish. I've got David to finish. I think I finished the rock tumbler thing. I mean, there's always stuff I can add to that, but I think that's pretty much good.
I'm ready to talk
David and Daniel, man.
I want to talk
David.
I want to talk David. I want to talk Mephibosheth. I want to talk all this kind of stuff, man. Yeah.
I was actually just talking to my daughter about Mephibosheth
Yeah.
because she's getting to the point, bro. She has like
Yeah.
12 children's Bibles, and I'm reading them to her not daily, but pretty much daily at night when I'm
Yeah.
laying her down and stuff like that. I mean, sometimes my wife lays her down or she falls asleep early, or once in a while we let her and my son watch a movie as they fall asleep together, hanging
Yeah.
out kind of thing. But she's got these children's Bibles. Well, I've been doing this with her for like 5 years now. She
Yeah.
knows all this, and there, some of these children's Bibles, like some of them have the basic ones, Samson and Creation and Jericho, but some of them, Jeff, they've got Numbers 22 and 23 in there. They've got Korah's rebellion in there,
Yeah.
and she knows all of these to
Wow.
the point, Jeff, where I'm about to flip the page, and she goes, "Oh yeah, that's when this and this and this and this." And
Oh.
she knows the scriptures better than I did when I first started doing ministries. She knows she knows the stories. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm getting to the point where I keep thinking, like, man, it's about time I start reading her scripture.
That's great.
You know, not just, I mean, she's going into second grade. You know what I'm saying? She's young.
What a head start.
Oh,
I mean, and that's,
you don't even know. You don't even know.
That is Yah's perfect plan. That is his idea that we discuss this. I don't know. It's something that we're supposed to hear and obey, right? I don't know.
Yeah, Shema is hear and obey.
Yeah, every day we're talking to our kids as we get up, as we walk down the road, we lay down, we're all the time. Gosh, it kind of sounds like you're a little bit of a fanatic there. That's great. I love to hear it.
Yeah, I'm sure the 3-letter agencies that I didn't mention tonight, along with the ones that I did mention tonight, would say the same. Would discuss. I brought up a couple 3-letter agencies, didn't I? I didn't even bring up like the Foreign Council of Relations and all these other things.
No, we didn't even talk about Epstein not killing himself.
Yeah. No, I didn't make any references to that or the Clintons. My goodness, no. I definitely didn't call that WHO and WEF and Dr. Ouchie. The Babylonian Egyptian magicians of today. I didn't say that.
Oh, I love it. I love it, brother. I love it.
All right, man. Well, it's good doing this with you. I'm ready to go. My gums are starting to hurt again. But dude, let's do it, David, man. I'm down for it.
I'm ready.
And I'm not saying I'm like expert on David.
So do you want to start it on maybe 12:31 at 11 p.m.?
12:31. I'm trying to tell you, Jeff, I'm not an expert on David, okay? But I can say this. I've done 1 Samuel up to Goliath is what, chapter 17, I think?
Yeah.
So I'm up to that point, I think. I don't think I went past that. Oh, maybe I did, though. Dang it, I'm gonna have to go look now. I don't even remember, Jeff. I don't remember what I've done.
Well, let's just pick up after Goliath. I'm down for that.
All right, let me go look though, because I don't want to. Because I hit 1 Samuel pretty hard, so I don't want to have to hit 18 and 19. I think I left it though because I wanted to do John the Baptist with dirt and then move forward. That's what it was. All right, man. You and I will talk about David because there's some things in there about David's wife and the head under the pillow and things that connect to John the Baptist. And I've been sitting on that for like 3 years now. I actually did that a while ago. I mean, it's. Have you and I talked about that stuff that like Lake and them don't even talk about?
No, we haven't talked about it.
Oh yeah.
I'm excited.
I've mentioned it to a couple people, and I've actually watched videos of people who know me talk to other people like Lake types that don't know me about this, and I'm like, man, I'm the one who was given that word that I was like, man, let me get it out. Yeah.
Nice.
Anyways. Nice. All right, man. I'm gonna let you go. Shalom. I'm gonna do the outro video. I forgot how much that outro video pumps me up. But thank you for coming in to Draw Nigh to God, or Draw Nigh to the Creator, rather, the DNG 144 show here at Take on the World TV. Just so you know, all DNG 144 merchandise, past, present, and future to come. And we're talking, see, I do that and that means different things. Okay, we're talking coffee mugs. Yeah, there we go. See, I do this and people are going to think alcohol. I mean, we're talking gear and things.
Yeah.
Right? So we've got something. All stuff is going to be done through Nana Z's. It is a Torah observant widow and her daughter, and there's all kinds of announcements with that. Jeff, your stuff's going through that too, right?
Yeah. We're in the design process right now. So I'm super excited.
I'm waiting on the same on certain things here, but Nana Z's, man, we're about to start putting stuff there. So if you're looking for the DNG shirts, the Draw Nigh to God shirts, the Joseph shirts, the or not Joseph, Jonah and Ketos, Faith is Dead Without Works, and the Catholic shirt, Nana Z's, Facebook, Instagram, stuff like that. You hit up Nana Z's and you can find my stuff there, and stuff to come, and Way Remnant stuff to come, and other stuff that I'm not even supposed to say anything about, so I'm not going to. But okay, so that's that. Thanks for coming in. Shalom to you all. I hope you, if you hung out the whole time, man, blessings to you guys, because Jeff and I, we enjoy ourselves, but for you to enjoy us, that's a whole other thing.
We can do this without an audience. It'll be fine. We just do it all night.
Right? Yeah. That's why I like doing videos with you, because I forget there is an audience. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I got to explain something. So you and I are just going to talk. But we hope you come back. And keep in mind, Take on the World TV has many shows, including, wrong way. Including, See how, it's like I'm dyslexic with the directions kind of thing with the camera and all that. It's like a mirror, man. It messes me up.
Yeah.
Let's see. Does it? Oh, okay. Never mind. All right. So okay. So anyways, Way Remnant is on Take on the World TV now, along with a bunch of other shows. There's almost nightly we have different shows by different people with different gifts and different talents and different types of ministerial administrations with those gifts and talents and spiritual offices. So maybe you don't like Draw Nigh to the Creator show. Maybe you're more of a Way Remnant listener, or maybe you want to go check out Sit Rep or one of the other ones. That's fine. I'm just saying, if you haven't already, go check them out.
Yeah,
all right. Any last parting words, Jeff?
Oh yeah, Karen just says she says that she needs to email my doozy questions to Miranda for Jeff. Yeah, we moved our shows to Monday nights. This coming Monday night on the Way Remnant, Miranda is going to interview me on how I came to Torah. And she said she's going to do some zinger questions, and she put it out there. Guys, if you want to throw some zinger questions at me about how I came to Torah, she's going to give those live to me on the air. I will not peek. They will be potentially zinger questions, so it's going to be fun. So ask anything, and I may tell you anything. So be warned what you ask.
I could have fun with this, Jeff. You know that, right?
Good. I know, brother.
I'm glad you took the opportunity on the platform and everything, but just remember, I heard you too. That's all I'm saying.
I know, man. But hey, I'm ready. It's gonna be Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Take on the World TV. It's gonna be how I came to Torah. It's gonna be fun.
All right, man. Sounds good. Hey, we hit the life of Joseph in 3.5 hours, and like 26 minutes of that was me being like, I haven't been on here forever. So that was awesome, man. Thanks for coming on, and
thank you for having me.
You steamrolled with me, man. So
I did.
Hats off to you. I know. But you brought a lot to the table. Thanks for coming out. We got to talk about David.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Shalom, shalom.
Hi, guys.
Yeah. He's alive. It's really just that simple, man. Draw nigh to God, man. Yeah. Draw nigh to God, He will draw nigh unto you. Draw nigh to God, He will draw nigh unto you.